the ice and fire demon god of Hogwarts. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 726, Unlimited Avada Kedavra, a bloody feast unleashed by the alchemical heavy machine gun. As old Barty said, Voldemort sent so many Death Eaters to attack the Ministry of Magic for one and only one purpose, which was to distract the attention of Hogwarts Castle and force one of Lin or Irina to come to the Ministry of Magic's aid. Otherwise, Voldemort could have concentrated the Death Eaters to attack the Ministry of Magic. After conquering Hogwarts Castle, these Death Eaters attacked the Ministry of Magic in order to get Hogwarts Castle to send a demon level wizard to support them, but in this way, these Death Eaters would have to face a demon level wizard directly without any room for escape. Cannon fodder. After hearing old Barty's sarcasm, such a word appeared in McNeil's mind. Even cannon fodder needs a qualified commander, and he, McNeil, a core member of the Death Eaters, is the commander chosen by Voldemort. He is the commander of these Death Eaters who attacked the Ministry of Magic, but he is also a member of the cannon fodder. After figuring it all out, McNeil's face turned very ugly, but he had no choice. He had completely devoted himself to the Death Eaters, and had no way out. Unless McNeil captured the Ministry of Magic before the arrival of the Demon King level wizards in Hogwarts Castle, completed Voldemort's mission, and then left here to report to Voldemort. Otherwise, his fate was to die here. Thinking of this, a fierce look appeared in McNeil's eyes. He stopped talking trash to old Barty, but growled, "Death Eaters, under the order of the Master, capture the British Ministry of Magic." At this time, the number of Death Eaters who came to this narrow passage reached more than 600, which had exceeded the number of auras in the hall of the Ministry of Magic. With McNeil's order, these Death Eaters all rushed towards the direction of the hall of the Ministry of Magic. They waved their wands vigorously, and one after another black magic or powerful spells flew towards the auras who intercepted them in front of them. The war has begun. Everyone, remove all restrictions, and defend with all your strength. Old Barty roared loudly, including Scrimgeour, the director of the Aura office. More than 100 elite auras holding wands all raised their wands, and pointed them at the Death Eaters in the narrow passage. Avada Kedavra, Avada Kedavra, Avada Kedavra. Before the Death Eaters had time to use the 3 unforgivable curses, the more than 100 auras took the initiative, and chanted the spell of the killing curse. Looking at the army of Death Eaters on the opposite side, the eyes of these auras rarely showed extreme killing intent. In an instant, endless green light lit up in the hall of the Ministry of Magic. What is incredible is that the auras who cast the killing curse are all from the Ministry of Magic. The more than 100 green killing curses flashed with a deadly luster, like thousands of arrows falling in the direction of the Death Eater army. Auras have strict restrictions on the use of black magic such as the unforgivable curses. In most operations to capture dark wizards, they are only allowed to use control spells such as the disarming spell. But this does not mean that they will not use the 3 unforgivable curses, including the Kedavra curse. After old Barty announced the lifting of all restrictions, the Aura office temporarily lifted the restrictions on auras using dark magic and unforgivable curses. This is also what the Ministry of Magic of each country will do in wartime. After all, no one can expect their own family to win the war with a spell that has almost no lethality, such as the disarming curse. There are many conditions for victory in a war, but killing all the enemies, or reducing the enemy's manpower as much as possible is the fastest and simplest way to achieve victory. The Kedavra curse, a killing magic that kills on contact, is the best choice in war. Looking at the green beam of light coming straight at their faces, these Death Eaters all waved their wands, smashed the ground of the passage, and used the levitation curse to control the rubble to block in front of them. Friends who often use the Avada Kedavra curse know that any protective magic cannot resist the attack of the Kedavra curse, but physical obstacles can easily resist the Kedavra curse. Most of these Death Eaters sent by Voldemort to attack the Ministry of Magic were dark wizards recruited by Voldemort from the magic world all over Europe, and almost all the Death Eaters from the native British magic world were brought to the battlefield of Hogwarts by Voldemort. Unlike the mentally retarded and stupid dark wizards born from the marriage of close relatives of pure blood families in the British magic world, most of the dark wizards in other European magic worlds are very powerful. They are shrewd and cunning, but they have mastered powerful black magic, which makes the Ministry of Magic in their country have no way to deal with them, and facing the attack of these green beams, they seem to be so at ease. These more than 100 Avada Kedavra curses fell, but only killed more than 10 Death Eaters. However, these more than 100 Avada Kedavra attacks are just appetizers. Deafening gunshots rang out in the all-chemical heavy machine gun position, and 100 all-chemical heavy machine guns, under the operation of auras, fired in the direction of the Death Eater army. In just one breath, thousands of all-chemical bullets burst through the air, turning into an endless hail of bullets, raining down on the Death Eaters in the front. Flowers of blood bloomed in this narrow passage, and the bodies of dozens of Death Eaters who rushed to the front were almost riddled with holes by countless all-chemical bullets in an instant. The ground was splattered with scarlet blood, and the blood flowers that burst out dyed the fireplace, the pillars, the ceiling, and the faces of the Death Eaters around. Seeing the Death Eaters who were still alive and kicking just now, they were blown into pieces of meat by countless all-chemical bullets in an instant, and the Death Eaters behind were stunned. However, they were stunned, but the auras in the all-chemical heavy machine gun position did not stop pulling the trigger. A steady stream of all-chemical bullets burst through the air and bombarded the Death Eaters in the distance. In less than half a minute, more than 100 Death Eaters died in this narrow passage. Damn it. Destroy those all-chemical weapons. Otherwise we will all die here. Thunder explosion. Finally, a Death Eater discovered the source of these all-chemical bullets. He roared and pointed his wand at an all-chemical heavy machine gun in the distance. The orange red light broke through the air and landed on the front of the all-chemical heavy machine gun, and then exploded. The all-chemical heavy machine gun was immediately blown up by the explosion spell. The violent flames swept over and overturned the two all-chemical heavy machine guns next to it. The aura who was operating the blown up all-chemical heavy machine gun was instantly engulfed by the flames and died on the spot, while the aura who was responsible for handing him the ammunition chain was severely burned all over his body, but luckily saved his life. Chapter 727. The Ministry of Magic is on the verge of fall, and old Batty is forced to ask for help. The aura, who was severely burned, screamed with all his might, "Damn it! Protect the position with the shield charm. Protect the position." Hearing the words of the aura, the surrounding auras seemed to wake up from a dream. They waved their wands and released a shield charm in front of them, narrowly blocking the subsequent attacks of the Death Eaters. The auras in charge of logistics also added protective magic such as the enemy repelling charm. The magic level of these new auras was not as good as those of the elite auras, but when the aura office recruited this batch of auras, it specially trained them, and the content of the training was protective magic such as the shield charm, so that they could save their lives when encountering dark wizards. Hundreds of shield charms were released to resist in front of the all-chemical heavy machine gun position, protecting these all-chemical heavy machine guns from the attacks of the Death Eaters' powerful spells such as the explosive curse. The two all-chemical heavy machine guns that were overturned by the explosion were also fixed back by the auras, and the injured aura was replaced by the aura behind. The flying all-chemical bullets continued to harvest the lives of the Death Eaters. Even if the Death Eaters released protective magic such as the Iron Armor Charm in time to resist the all-chemical bullets, facing the all-chemical magic array with penetration effects engraved on the surface of the all-chemical bullets, these Iron Armor Charms were not enough. As time went by, more than 300 Death Eaters died in this narrow passage. However, the auras were not happy about their achievements, but felt more and more desperate. There was still a steady stream of Death Eaters coming out of the fireplace to fill the vacant positions of the Death Eater army. So far, the number of Death Eaters who arrived at the Ministry of Magic through the fireplace has exceeded 1,200. Even though the auras used the armor charm continuously, there were only 200 or 300 auras in the alchemy heavy machine gun position, while the Death Eaters who were standing in front and constantly firing spells at them were more than 500. The armor charm could easily block spells such as the disarming charm, but when facing powerful spells such as the explosive charm, the black magic that could corrode magic power, and the Avada Kedavra that ignored all magical defenses, a single armor charm was not enough. One after another, the black magic penetrated the armor charm released by the auras, and flew towards the alchemy heavy machine gun position. One after another, the dark beams bombarded the auras operating the alchemy heavy machine gun, corroding most of their bodies, leaving only the beating heart in the chest and the head that was constantly wailing in pain. Not only that, after the more than 100 elite auras first used the Avada Kedavra curse, the Death Eaters seemed to be awakened, and threw out green beams of light in the sky without hesitation. These Avada Kedavra curses passed through the armor spells set by the auras without any hindrance, and hit the auras operating the alchemical heavy machine guns, killing them. The bodies of the auras fell from behind the alchemical heavy machine guns, but soon, more auras filled their positions, operating the alchemical heavy machine guns with resolute eyes, and shot as many Death Eaters as possible who were gradually approaching the hall of the Ministry of Magic. However, the persistence of these auras was useless in the face of the Death Eaters' human wave tactics. The original 200 auras at the alchemical heavy machine gun position had already been killed or injured, and those who filled their positions, in addition to the auras who originally held alchemical rifles in the back, were also some civilian staff who rushed from the back of the Ministry of Magic with the determination to die. Even the Ministry of Magic staff other than the auras came forward. It is conceivable that the Ministry of Magic has fallen into such a desperate situation now. More than half of the Aura's office was killed or injured, while the death toll of the Death Eaters was only more than 500, not much higher than the casualties of the Auras. Not only that, as more Death Eaters came to the Ministry of Magic through the fireplace, the speed at which the Death Eaters killed the Auras became faster and faster. On the contrary, the speed at which the auras killed the Death Eaters became slower and slower as the alchemical heavy machine guns in the alchemical heavy machine gun position were blown up one by the Death Eaters' explosive spells. After losing the support of the alchemical weapons, these new auras had to die 2 people on average to kill 1 Death Eater. On the other side of the Ministry of Magic Hall, Old Barty and Scrimgeour stood side by side, and standing opposite them was the leader of these Death Eaters, McNeil. At the entrance of the Ministry of Magic Hall, the auras and the Death Eaters continued to fight in a soldier-to-soldier manner, while Old Barty and Scrimgeour also fought with McNeil in a general-to-general manner. They knew that only by completely killing the leader, McNeil, could they make the Death Eaters leaderless and become a mess. Whether it was Old Barty or Scrimgeour, their magic level was comparable to McNeil, who had received the power bestowed by Voldemort. When Old Barty and Scrimgeour joined forces to fight the enemy, McNeil was naturally no match for them. However, McNeil, who was retreating step by step under the attack of Old Barty and Scrimgeour, was not panicked at all. Even if he could not defeat Old Barty and Scrimgeour, it would be equally difficult for the other party to kill him. McNeil did not need to defeat the other party. He only needed to hold Old Barty and Scrimgeour back until the Death Eaters killed all the stupid auras of the Ministry of Magic and captured the Ministry of Magic. Judging from the current situation of the Death Eaters, McNeil was not far from victory, and the Ministry of Magic was about to fall. Barty the Elder and Scrimgeour naturally noticed that the alchemical weapons had been destroyed, and the auras who had almost no power to fight back, all showed anxiety on their faces, and they waved their wands more fiercely, and their offensive became more fierce. However, McNeil just dragged them, and did not resist their spells head on, which made Barty the Elder and Scrimgeour feel like they were trapped in a quagmire, unable to defeat them, and unable to extricate themselves. Hurry up and do something. Crouch. The Ministry of Magic is about to fall. Scrimgeour watched his auras being killed one by the Death Eaters, and he couldn't help but feel heartbroken. He cast several killing curses at McNeil in a row, and shouted to Barty the Elder beside him. Barty gritted his teeth, glanced at McNeil not far away, and whispered, "Hold McNeil for a while please. We have to ask Hogwarts for help. We have no other choice." Even though Barty saw that the Death Eaters' attack on the Ministry of Magic was Voldemort's plot to lure the tiger away from the mountain, the Ministry of Magic was on the verge of collapse. Apart from asking Hogwarts for help, he had no other choice. Hearing Barty's words, Scrimgeour did not respond, but he waved his wand faster and took the initiative to step forward and block several dark magics that were originally attacking Barty. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel. Mundo fanfic novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 728. The decisive battle begins. A duel between kings. Seeing old Barty take out the special two-sided mirror, McNeil, who was not far away, became anxious. McNeil knew very well that their army of Death Eaters responsible for attacking the Ministry of Magic seemed to be extremely glorious, but it was just a bait used by Voldemort to lure the tiger away from the mountain. When the Demon King level wizards from Hogwarts arrived, the Ministry of Magic would be able to turn defeat into victory in an instant. And that also meant that this army of Death Eaters and his leader would be doomed. Avada Kedavra. Avada Kedavra. Avada Kedavra. McNeil's eyes turned red with anxiety. He waved his wand fiercely and released 3 killing curses in a row in the direction of old Barty. However, Scrimger used an explosive spell to smash the statue on the Magic Brothers fountain not far away, and then used magic to pull several broken large stones over to block the flight path of the 3 green beams. The explosion sounded, and the fragments of the Magic Brothers fountain statue accurately intercepted the 3 killing curses, but these fragments were completely turned into powder, and there was no possibility of repair. Super armor protection. Scrimger shouted, and a blue light lit up. However, the object of Scrimger's magic was not himself, but old Barty who was behind him. The blue light turned into a spherical translucent shield, covering old Barty's figure. Under Scrimger's restraint, old Barty quickly used a special two-sided mirror to ask for help from Hogwarts. He had great trust in Scrimger's magic level, and he believed that Scrimger could block all attacks for him before he sent a message for help. At the same time, at Hogwarts Castle, Lin and Irina, who were confronting Voldemort and the Death Eaters' army of more than 3,000 people on the high ground at the other end of the bridge, subconsciously took out a special two-sided mirror from their pockets. Lin, I'll go to the Ministry of Magic. After learning about the battle situation in the Ministry of Magic Hall from the message sent by old Barty, Irina looked very serious, frowning and said so. Lin looked back at the deployed positions, nodded solemnly, and said, "You go, I will protect Hogwarts." Irina didn't say much. She took out a milky white chess piece, which was a milky white chess piece representing the Queen, and also belonged to Irina's pocket anchor. Irina looked up at the sky with a full moon hanging high, and she looked at the Death Eaters who were ready to move across the bridge with some uneasiness. With a flash of white light around her, she disappeared from the spot. Watching Irina leave, Lin looked at his comrades behind, and he shouted loudly, "Everyone, be ready to fight." At the other end of the beam bridge, Voldemort watched Irina leave on the pocket anchor with his own eyes, and the corners of his mouth rose wildly, revealing a smile of success. The reason why Voldemort had to wait until the full moon rose was not because he really wanted to give Hogwarts a chance to surrender. He knew in his heart that there was no possibility of surrendering Hogwarts Castle. As old Barty said, Voldemort did not have the confidence to defeat 2 demon level wizards at the same time, which forced him to abandon an army of Death Eaters and let them attack the Ministry of Magic alone to contain the demon level wizards in Hogwarts and achieve the goal of luring the tiger away from the mountain. Fortunately, Dumbledore had died a few months ago, otherwise, it would be easy for Voldemort to contain a demon level wizard, but it would not be so easy for him to repeat the same trick and lure away 2 demon level wizards. After all, only demon level wizards can contain demon level wizards. If his power to contain demon level wizards is not strong enough, then Hogwarts Castle only needs to allocate 1 demon level wizard to defeat 1 or even multiple Death Eaters battlefields. Voldemort knew that the battlefield at the Ministry of Magic could not hold Irina for long, which meant that he had to lead the army of more than 3,000 Death Eaters to defeat the defense of Hogwarts before Irina returned. Not only that, Voldemort also had to use a star power he had plundered to catch Lin, who was fighting with forbidden magic power, off guard before Irina returned, and it would be best to kill Lin completely. In this way, Voldemort could fight the returning Irina one-on-one and have a higher chance of winning. Voldemort turned around and looked at both sides of the Death Eater army. After the full moon rose, the nearly 900 werewolves had completed the transformation process and turned into strong werewolves with sharp claws and sharp teeth. Before these werewolves came here, they took wolf poison potion in advance, which allowed them to fight with their strong physique in werewolf form, while maintaining their sanity. The war has begun. My servants, conquer Hogwarts Castle, and the magic world will be ours. Voldemort roared, and he waved his wand. A huge beam of light with a diameter of more than 3 meters broke through the air, and went straight to the magic shield, that turned the entire Hogwarts Castle upside down. This full strength attack from the Demon King level wizard actually caused a huge crack in the shield, that was jointly released by hundreds of people, including 2 other Demon King level wizards. Hearing Voldemort's words, the more than 3,000 Death Eaters roared, waving their wands, and releasing spells to hit the huge magic shield. And they also rushed towards the only bridge leading to Hogwarts Castle like zombies attacking the city. In just a few breaths, more than 200 Death Eaters stepped onto the bridge. Looking at these Death Eaters launching a general attack, Lin En's face was grim. He opened his hands to both sides, and a surging fierce fire turned into a huge fire phoenix, slamming hard in the direction of the bridge. Voldemort would not sit back and watch Lin En slaughter his Death Eaters at will. He also waved his wand, and black mist surged out, heading for the phoenix transformed by Fiend Fi. Lin En sneered disdainfully, and pointed the wand in his hand in the direction of Voldemort. Vulcan, make way. As Lin En's voice fell, the phoenix transformed by Fiend Fire actually changed direction out of thin air, turning into a road covered with flames, heading straight for Voldemort. The Vulcan, which Lin En released, cleared the way for Voldemort's black smoke, and turned into a flame that engulfed everything and enveloped Voldemort. Voldemort's face was grim, and he thrust his wand forcefully toward his body, roaring, "All curses end." This demon level all curses end curse spread out, extinguishing Lin En's flames, while temporarily and forcibly lifting the restrictions of the anti-apparition spell imposed on him by Hogwarts Castle. Come on, Raoul, let's have a fair duel. Voldemort stared at Lin with his scarlet snake eyes. A duel between kings. Chapter 729. The bloody black magic mark shocked the whole audience, and the alchemical crossbow was extremely powerful. I'm happy to accompany you. Lin En's dark red eyes also stared at Voldemort, and he swung the wand in his hand violently. The mountain hundreds of meters away shattered under the bombardment of huge magic power, shattered into thousands of rubbles, and under the changes of Lin En's transfiguration, they turned into thousands of wild wolves, rushing towards Voldemort. Under the effect of transfiguration, the bodies of the wild wolves transformed from rubbles actually grew wings. These wild wolves flapped their wings violently, flew into the air, and waved their claws towards Voldemort. Swish! The forbidden magic fire ignited from Lin En's body, and under Lin En's control, it spread to all directions of Voldemort, turning into a cage of fire, compressing Voldemort's living space. The forbidden magic power descended on Voldemort, suppressing the magic power in his body by more than 60%, and the thousands of wild wolves around him burst into endless murderous intent. Seeing this, a golden light flashed in Voldemort's scarlet snake pupils, and he actually gave up using magic to deal with the attacking wild wolves. As Voldemort waved his hands, a golden light flashed around him quickly with his body as the center. This golden light was like a sharp blade, passing around Voldemort's body, cutting the thousands of wild wolves apart. The huge force actually broke the magic of transfiguration in the wild wolves' bodies, turning these wild wolves into gravel again. Looking at the flash of golden light, Lin En frowned, and whispered to himself, "The power of the stars." Lin En did not expect that Voldemort, who specialized in black magic, could also control the power of the stars, a power from outside the world, which allowed Voldemort to find another way, and ignore the suppression of his forbidden magic power. Since the forbidden magic power was no longer useful, Lin En no longer relied on the forbidden magic fire. He used a wisp of his mind to maintain the forbidden magic fire that had been released, and then he no longer cared about it. Under the bright starry sky, the purple gold flame suddenly ignited. This purple gold sky fire had already demonstrated its most powerful power when the starry sky was bright. The extreme high temperature almost ignited the air, and the purple gold flame spread throughout the sky and swept towards Voldemort. Damn it! Voldemort roared, and he waved his magic wand. Blood sacrifice. Dark mark. The corpse reappears. A blood-colored beam of light shot up into the sky and bloomed over the sky above Hogwarts Castle, turning into the extremely creepy blood-colored dark mark. Under the illumination of this blood-colored dark mark, Voldemort's magic power seemed to have increased a lot, which allowed the black mist he released to block the attack of the purple-colored skyfire. Voldemort was bathed in blood, and every black magic he released was strengthened by the bloody black magic mark. His black magic was entangled with Lin En's purple myrtle skyfire, and a stalemate occurred. However, under the bath of the bloody black magic mark, it was not only Voldemort who was strengthened in magic power, but also the 3,000 Death Eaters below. The eyes of these Death Eaters were all red, and the roars like beasts came out of their mouths. The black magic they released was stronger than the last one. Soon, the huge shield covering the Hogwarts castle was full of cracks. Inside the shield, the professors of Hogwarts, members of the Order of the Phoenix, and members of the DA army were all affected by the negative effects of the bloody black magic mark, which slowed down their movements and showed visible fatigue in their eyes. However, the negative effects of the bloody black magic mark could not affect their fighting spirit at all. Looking at the 200 or 300 Death Eaters who boarded the bridge, 4 or 5 members of the DA army came to the alchemical crossbow with a huge crossbow arrow. At this time, someone might ask, how big is this crossbow arrow, that it takes 4 or 5 DA army members to lift it together? Exclamation mark. In fact, it is not so much a crossbow arrow as a slender iron pillar. This alchemical crossbow arrow is 5 meters long, with a density more than 10 times that of iron, and its diameter is more than 1 foot. This huge alchemical crossbow arrow is engraved with dense alchemical arrays, which makes the power of this alchemical crossbow arrow strengthened by unknown times. After installing the crossbow arrow, Professor Flitwick came to the back of the alchemical crossbow cart. He will fire the first shot to counterattack the Death Eaters. Professor Flitwick inserted his wand into the operating hole, reserved for the alchemical crossbow cart. As Professor Flitwick injected magic power into the alchemical crossbow cart, a strong light bloomed from the huge alchemical crossbow cart. This is the process of the alchemical crossbow cart charging. The sound of the alchemical crossbow chariot even charging its power was so loud that it was conceivable that when the alchemical crossbow chariot completed its charging and fired the 5-meter-long alchemical crossbow arrow, what kind of lethality would it produce? After nearly 5 seconds, both the lingering light and the buzzing sound that kept exploding in everyone's ears had reached their peak. Professor Flitwick gently turned his wand inserted in the alchemical crossbow chariot. Boom. A violent explosion sounded from the alchemical crossbow chariot, and the alchemical crossbow arrow broke through the air in an instant, spanning a distance of hundreds of meters, and arriving in front of the Death Eaters. The bridge was narrow to begin with, leaving these Death Eaters no room to dodge. The alchemical crossbow chariot was an alchemical weapon that these Death Eaters had never seen before, which prevented these Death Eaters from defending in time, nor from reacting before the alchemical crossbow arrow killed them. The huge alchemical crossbow arrow pierced through the Death Eater in the front, blowing half of his body into pieces. Not only that, the power of the alchemical crossbow arrow did not diminish after killing the first Death Eater, but continued to pierce through the Death Eaters in the back, constantly blowing up more Death Eaters' bodies and constantly harvesting more Death Eaters' lives. When the power of the alchemical crossbow arrow was consumed and fell from the air, it had already cut a bloody path of 50 meters through the Death Eater army. On the flight path of this alchemical crossbow arrow, the bodies of more than 100 Death Eaters were blown into pieces by this huge crossbow arrow. There were also nearly 80 Death Eaters who were only touched by this alchemical crossbow arrow, and half of their bodies were blown to pieces by the power that was engulfed, and they lost their ability to fight. Even though the members of the DA army were negatively affected by the bloody dark mark, and even though the magic power of the Death Eaters was enhanced by the bloody dark mark, the power of the alchemical creation could not be controlled by the bloody dark mark. Just one charged shot of the alchemical ballista killed more than 100 Death Eaters, and all the Death Eaters who stepped onto the bridge lost their ability to fight. Chapter 730, The Bombardment of the Alchemical Howitzer. An army of 100,000 eight-eyed giant spiders sets out. Behind the alchemical crossbow, there were 10 alchemical heavy machine guns pointing their muzzles at the Death Eaters on the bridge. Even though these Death Eaters had completely lost their ability to fight due to the residual power of the alchemical crossbow arrows, since they had chosen to attack Hogwarts Castle, they had to be prepared to not leave alive. The DA army members operating the 10 all-chemical heavy machine guns had no mercy in their eyes, only endless killing intent and anger, and they pulled the trigger without hesitation. An endless metal storm spread over the bridge, and the all-chemical bullets that kept passing through the bridge exploded with enchanting blood on the Death Eaters who were still alive on the bridge. The Death Eaters, who had already lost their arms and legs under the influence of the all-chemical crossbow arrows, were instantly blown into pieces of meat by the constantly attacking all-chemical bullets. The blooming blood-colored flowers embellished the bridge with a different decoration, and the broken flesh and blood raised the bridge by several inches. More than 1/3 of this short bridge of several hundred meters turned into endless blood red, as if one end of the bridge was the human world, and the other end was the underworld. More than 200 Death Eaters who boarded the bridge all died under the all-chemical crossbow and the all-chemical heavy machine gun, which frightened the Death Eaters behind them, and they dared not approach the bridge any further. But soon, a Death Eater thought of a new way. Rookwood stood up and shouted loudly, "Everyone, follow me down the high ground. Since this bridge is easy to defend and difficult to attack, let's just walk across the gully between the two high grounds and charge into Hogwarts." Hearing Rookwood's words, many Death Eaters' eyes lit up. They no longer approached the bridge, but rushed down the high ground and rushed towards the gully with a height difference of nearly 200 meters and a straight line distance of more than 1,000 meters from the Hogwarts castle. The position of the all-chemical heavy machine gun position is behind the all-chemical crossbow, not on the edge of the cliff. This makes it impossible for the all-chemical bullets that can only shoot in a straight line to hit the Death Eaters who have already rushed into the ravine and entered the blind spot of the all-chemical heavy machine gun. Unless the DA army moves the all-chemical heavy machine gun position to the edge of the cliff, they can only wait for those Death Eaters to rush up the cliff and be only 100 or 200 meters away from them before they can use the all-chemical heavy machine gun to shoot the Death Eaters. However, it is not easy to move the all-chemical heavy machine gun position. Even if everyone can cast the floating spell to speed up, the Death Eaters who can use the acceleration spell for themselves will also march at a fast speed. When the DA army moves the all-chemical heavy machine gun position to the edge of the cliff, those Death Eaters are probably only 100 or 200 meters away from rushing to the high ground, where the Hogwarts castle is located. This is a completely thankless task. However, this does not mean that the DA army can't do anything about those Death Eaters who are marching on foot. Don't forget that the all-chemical position deployed in front of Hogwarts castle, in addition to the all-chemical heavy machine gun position composed of 50 all-chemical heavy machine guns, also has an all-chemical howitzer position composed of 20 all-chemical howitzers. DA army all-chemical howitzer position, fire 3 rounds. On the edge of the cliff, Neville looked at the position of the Death Eater army in the distance. He turned his head suddenly and roared. As Neville's voice fell, the 20 all-chemical howitzers finished firing at the same time. 20 all-chemical grenades swayed with flames, drew a beautiful parabola in the air, and fell towards the Death Eater army below. Boom. 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 Explosions rang out in succession among the Death Eater army. Every all-chemical grenade that exploded could wipe out all lives within a radius of more than 30 feet in an instant. Not only that, the sweeping air wave also blew away the Death Eaters farther away, and they fell off the cliff. The lucky ones had their hands and feet broken, while the unlucky ones died on the spot. In just the first round of volleys from the all-chemical howitzer position, more than 400 Death Eaters died under the bombardment of the all-chemical grenades. The number of Death Eaters killed and wounded in this bombardment was doubled compared to the number of Death Eaters who died on the bridge. The bombardment from the all-chemical howitzer position did not stop because of the heavy casualties of the Death Eater army. The next 2 rounds of volleys were all over the Death Eater army. After 3 rounds of volleys, including the Death Eaters who died on the bridge, the number of Death Eaters who died has exceeded 800. This is already a quarter of the total number of Death Eaters in this army. The remaining Death Eaters were all in despair. If the all-chemical howitzer position continued to bombard them, they would probably be completely wiped out before they could reach the high ground where Hogwarts castle was located. Just as some Death Eaters began to shrink back and even retreat, dense click sounds came from the rear of the Death Eater army. A Death Eater noticed something was wrong in the rear and looked back. When he saw what appeared in the rear, he, as a big man, made a sharp explosion like an old woman. A large group of densely packed 8-eyed giant spiders rushed out from the direction of the forbidden forest and came towards their rear. The continuous clicks sound that the Death Eater just heard was the sound made by these 8-eyed giant spiders when they moved using their spider legs. Countless 8-eyed giant spiders rushed out of the forbidden forest, and there was no end in sight. The number of these 8-eyed giant spiders exceeded at least tens of thousands. Oh no, it was 100,000. The scalps of these Death Eaters were all numb, and some were even frightened to the point of falling to the ground. The deterrent power brought to the Death Eaters by these tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dangerous level XXXXX 8-eyed giant spiders was stronger than the alchemical howitzer positions that were constantly bombarding them from afar. Don't panic, Death Eaters. These 8-eyed giant spiders are our comrades in arms. They will open the way for us, tear open the defenses of Hogwarts for us, and tear apart the enemies that stand in front of us. Just when the morale of the Death Eaters was a little unstable, Yaxley stood up. His face was fanatical, and he shouted loudly. You know, he has seen the process of these 8-eyed giant spiders breeding in various places in the Forbidden Forest, and after Aragog's death, the nuking of the 8-eyed giant spider clan has now become his puppet. Behind the tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of 8-eyed giant spiders, an 8-eyed giant spider as big as 3 8-eyed giant spiders slowly walked out of the Forbidden Forest. The body of this 8-eyed giant spider is strangely colorful, and it looks extremely strange under the illumination of the bloody black magic mark. There is no doubt that this colorful 8-eyed giant spider is the new king of the 8-eyed giant spider clan in the Forbidden Forest. Chapter 731 Human Wave Tactics. Defense line collapsed. Is it your plan to incite the Forbidden Forest's Acromanthus to rebel and use more than 100,000 Acromanthus as cannon fodder for the Death Eaters? Lin En said coldly in the sky. Lin En controlled the purple myrtle skyfire to encircle Voldemort, who was constantly evading by apparition, and his own figure also apparated again and again with the light of the fire, avoiding Voldemort's attacks. Voldemort apparated and appeared in the air 100 meters away. He sneered and said, I said, roll. I don't want wizards to bleed, and beasts like Acromanthus are naturally the best choice for cannon fodder. As soon as Voldemort finished speaking, his figure apparated and disappeared from the spot, and a black sharp blade pierced the place where he was before apparition the next moment. On the edge of the cliff, Neville's face turned ugly when he saw the densely packed Acromanthus join the battlefield, past the Death Eaters, and rushed towards the direction of Hogwarts Castle at a faster speed. Neville roared, alchemical howitzer position, full speed volley. Those despicable, damned Death Eaters actually united with tens of thousands of Acromanthus. The professors of Hogwarts, members of the Order of the Phoenix, and elite members of the DA Army who passed the high difficulty mode illusion test, all came to Neville's side quickly, and they waved their wands quickly. Explosive spells broke through the air, blasting the Acromanthus into charcoal. The volley speed of the alchemical howitzer position was getting faster and faster. Countless alchemical grenades drew beautiful parabolas in the air, as if they were free, and fell into the army of Acromanthus. After several volleys, 6 or 7,000 8-eyed giant spiders died under the bombardment of alchemical grenades, but compared with the total number of 8-eyed giant spiders, it was so insignificant. Irving walked to the cliff with a grim face. He looked at the army of 8-eyed giant spiders that were getting closer and closer to them, and gently waved his wand. Liho! Red and black flames ignited from the top of Irving's wand, transformed into the shapes of various beasts and flew out, devouring those 8-eyed giant spiders. The characteristic of Liho is to devour everything, and turn the devoured things into fuel for its own continuous burning. After burning the 8-eyed giant spiders in the front row, Liho not only did not weaken, but the fire increased by hundreds of times. Prepare all the curses. I can't control these Liho. Irving shouted to his companions. Let the Liho that rises to the sky continue to burn like this. Perhaps they can use this Liho to wipe out the tens of thousands, or even more than 100,000 8-eyed giant spiders in the ravine. But in that case, the fiend Phi, which had devoured the lives of more than 100,000 8-eyed giant spiders, would grow to a level that they could not control at all. The black magic of Fiend Phi has always been a powerful and extremely uncontrollable double-edged sword. It can annihilate the 8-eyed giant spiders, and naturally it can also burn down the entire Hogwarts castle. After the fiend fight devoured about 8,000 8-eyed giant spiders, the red and black flames that were like a sea of fire could no longer be controlled by Irving. All curses end. Irving did not hesitate at all. He immediately waved his wand and released the all curses end curse. His companions around him also followed him to cast spells, and the combined spell of all curses end curse forcibly extinguished the fiend fire. Astoria walked forward. She lowered her eyes slightly, and when she flicked her index finger, a drop of blood broke through the air from her fingertips. The blood bead turned into an extremely sharp blood blade in the air, and in an instant it crossed a distance of hundreds of meters, and cut into the densely packed 8-eyed giant spiders. The bodies of countless 8-eyed giant spiders were cut open by the extremely sharp blood blade. In the wounds cut by the blood blade, there was still black magic that continued to corrode the injured 8-eyed giant spiders until they were completely turned into blood. After learning that the war was coming, Astoria learned many curses, and the curse that made the cursed person corrode into blood in a short period of time was one of her best curses. Astoria used the blood curse to manifest the power of this curse in the blood blade, so that all enemies hit by the blood blade, even if they only scratched a layer of skin, would be cursed. Just a blood blade that was casually ejected allowed Astoria to kill more than 300 8-eyed giant spiders and dozens of Death Eaters mixed with the 8-eyed giant spiders. Under the alchemical howitzer position and the bombardment of everyone, the number of 8-eyed giant spiders in the Death Eater army was sharply reduced. However, compared with the huge base number, even if they have killed as many enemies as possible, it is a foolish dream to wipe out the 8-eyed giant spiders and the Death Eaters before they climb the high ground where the Hogwarts castle is located. There is no doubt that the human wave tactics of the Death Eaters and the 8-eyed giant spiders have been successful. The densely packed 8-eyed giant spiders climbed up the cliff and rushed towards the huge shield covering the Hogwarts castle. Even though more than half of the more than 100,000 8-eyed giant spiders were killed or injured under the bombardment of the alchemical howitzer position and the crowd, the remaining more than 50,000 8-eyed giant spiders are still not something that everyone can easily deal with. At this time, the only thing that can make everyone feel fortunate is that these 8-eyed giant spiders have entered the firing range of the alchemical heavy machine gun position, and the 50 alchemical heavy machine guns can finally kill these 8-eyed giant spiders. 50 alchemical heavy machine guns opened fire at the same time, pouring out endless alchemical ammunition, turning into a metal storm, descending on the 8-eyed giant spiders that climbed to the high ground. In an instant, the enchanting bloodlight bloomed, dyeing the sky red, dyeing the earth red, dyeing everything in people's vision red. This blood flower that continued to bloom turned this battlefield into a feast of killing and death. Not long after, the 8-eyed giant spiders came to the huge shield with the Death Eaters. These 8-eyed giant spiders used their sharp spider legs to continuously attack the huge shield. And the remaining more than 2,000 Death Eaters also waved their wands vigorously, bombarding the huge shield with powerful explosive spells. The huge shield made a sad humming sound, and then gradually disintegrated under this crazy attack. Taking advantage of the short time when the shield had not yet completely disintegrated and could still block the attacks of the Acromanthus and Death Eaters, the alchemical howitzer position fired 3 rounds in succession. In order to break the huge shield faster, the Acromanthus, which could only fight in close combat, almost squeezed together, so that each exploding alchemical grenade could take the lives of nearly 1,000 Acromanthus in an instant. After 3 rounds of volleys, the huge shield was completely broken under the bombardment of the Acromanthus and Death Eaters, but more than 48,000 of the more than 50,000 Acromanthus surrounding the front were killed. Only more than 2,000 Acromanthus, which was equal to the number of Death Eaters, were left, mixed with the Death Eater army, and continued to advance towards the direction of Hogwarts Castle. Chapter 732, Hand-to-hand combat between the vampire and werewolf armies. But even so, the number of Death Eaters and Acromanthus was more than 10 times that of the Hogwarts side. Seeing the enemy that was 10 times their own, everyone was on high alert, and the DA army members in the alchemical heavy machine gun position ignored the red and hot gun barrels and tried their best to shoot the advancing Acromanthus and Death Eaters. Soon, the two sides came into close combat. In order not to accidentally hurt their own people, the DA army members in the alchemical howitzer position and the alchemical heavy machine gun position had to give up the heavy weapons in their hands and chose to hold the alchemical rifles instead, standing on higher ground to kill the acromanthus and Death Eaters. Fred and George looked at each other and waved their wands. The 50 alchemical puppets standing behind them were all holding various alchemical rifles, alchemical sniper rifles, and even alchemical individual rocket launchers that could be fired repeatedly, and they rushed towards the Death Eater army. Newt gently patted the head of the Nangdu Panther beside him. The Nangdu Panther roared and rushed towards the 8-eyed giant spiders. It could flatten an 8-eyed giant spider with a slap and slap it to death. The curled winged demon wrapped around his wrist also popped out immediately, pierced into the back of a Death Eater's head, and after swallowing the opponent's brain, pierced through the opponent's forehead and flew out, constantly harvesting the lives of Death Eaters on the battlefield. Green waved the wand in his hand, and the 5 alchemical arrays surrounding him simultaneously shot out endless beams of light. Just him alone, the lethality displayed, was comparable to half of the alchemical heavy machine gun position. With Green's precise control of the alchemical array, he could ensure that the beams fired by his alchemical array would not accidentally injure his own people, and his bullets were accurate. However, in just a few breaths, more than 200 8-eyed giant spiders died under Green's alchemical array. The professors of Hogwarts and the people of the Order of the Phoenix also stepped forward. They continuously released powerful magic to force back the attacking acromantulas and Death Eaters. The elite members of the DA army waved their wands in unison, and hundreds of spells flew out in unison, cutting off the heads of many Death Eaters. If the professors of Hogwarts and the people of the Order of the Phoenix used lethal magic other than black magic such as explosive spells during the battle, then the DA army fought without any scruples. They almost went for the powerful one, and the one they used the most was the spell, which was not much less lethal than the Avada Kedavra. Of course, there were also members who specialized in a certain spell and used the spell they were best at to fight. For example, Harry, who could beat the Death Eaters into a pool of meat with a disarming spell, or Andy River, whose killing range of an explosive spell was larger than the explosion range of an alchemical grenade. On both sides of the Death Eater army, nearly 900 werewolves who had transformed roared and pounced on the DA army members in the front. Their eyes were full of bloodthirsty light, and their claws gleamed under the full moon. These werewolves were all standing on the edge of the Death Eater army, which prevented the alchemical grenades and other lethal weapons that were rushing to kill more Death Eaters, and fell in the center of the Death Eater army from affecting them. The werewolves with intact strength finally showed their fangs at this moment. In addition to these werewolves, there were almost no casualties, including the more than 300 vampires. Under the moonlight, the faces of these vampires were as pale and terrifying as white paper. Unlike werewolves, who only have the ability to transform on full moon nights, and while enhancing their physical strength and magic resistance, they have given up their ability to cast spells to a certain extent. Vampires can not only suck the blood of the enemy in battle to enhance their own strength and weaken the enemy, but also have a good ability to cast spells, which allows them to fight with magic and sharp teeth at the same time. The leader of these vampires, Fabrizio, looked at the young faces of the DA army members in the distance, licked the corners of his mouth, and laughed creepily. Compared with the blood of those old men and women, the blood of these young wizards made him salivate more. Fabrizio rushed towards a young witch of the DA army not far away. While waving his wand to deflect the magic that attacked from all around, he pointed the wand in his hand at the young witch. Faint. In order to suck the blood of the healthiest young witch, Fabrizio did not choose powerful magic, but planned to use a coma spell to knock the other party down and let himself suck the other party's blood. Super armor protection. But just when Fabrizio was about to succeed, a powerful armor spell with a blue light blocked the little witch and deflected Fabrizio's coma spell. Then, 2 figures jumped out and blocked the panicked little witch. The 2 people were Lin's teacher, Wallace and Green, and Irina's teacher, Newt Scamander. Go help the others. Newt smiled gently at the little witch, and then looked at Fabrizio in the distance with caution. Green also came over and stood side by side with Newt. The alchemy array around him continued to shine, and the huge power was accumulating energy in these 5 alchemy arrays. Newt Scamander, Wallace and Green. I didn't expect that you two big figures in the British and French magic circles would also intervene in this war. With your identities, it is the best choice to stand by and wait for the outcome of the war. The duck in hand flew away, which made Fabrizio very angry. Green snorted coldly and said sarcastically, when will it be the turn of the dirty vampires to intervene in the war between humans and wizards? According to the magic world's classification of wizards and magical animals, vampires belong to the category of humans, but in Green's mouth, Fabrizio became a creature other than humans who wanted to intervene in the wizard war. This made Fabrizio extremely angry. However, just when Fabrizio wanted to reply, Green did it without hesitation. The 5 alchemical array shot out golden beams like a meteor shower, attacking Fabrizio in the distance at lightning speed. Fabrizio was shocked. He didn't expect that Wallace and Green, a public figure, would be so unethical and sneak attack him, an old vampire over 300 years old. A flash of blood flashed in front of Fabrizio, and the shield made of blood suddenly lit up, blocking Fabrizio and absorbing all the golden beams that shot out. Chapter 733 Fabrizio dies in battle. Lupin's revenge. This is the secret method of Fabrizio's vampire family, which can turn the blood in his body into a weapon for fighting. He can turn the blood into blades, shields, arrows and other forms. At first glance, this vampire secret method is somewhat similar to Astoria's ancient magic blood curse, but in fact, the power of this secret method is extremely weak. The blood blades and blood-colored arrows transformed from the blood of vampires do not have much power, and their sharpness is not even as good as the iron swords and iron arrows of muggles. The only function of the blood blades and arrows transformed from their blood is to inject the toxins in the vampire's blood into the enemy's body in this way. Compared with the lethality of this secret method, its defensive ability is commendable. The blood-colored shield transformed from the blood of vampires can absorb magic power far exceeding its own strength, and gradually digest and disintegrate this magic power inside the blood-colored shield. While the blood-red shield was not yet broken, Fabrizio pointed his wand at Newt and Green. As his wrist shook, 2 Cruciatus curses flew out one after another. Newt snorted coldly. He dodged the Cruciatus curse sideways and cast a silent full-body binding spell and a crushing spell with his backhand. Green used his wand to pick up the Cruciatus curse. He clenched his left hand in the air, and a blue alchemical array was completed in the blind spot behind Fabrizio. Facing the joint attack of Newt and Green, Fabrizio released several armor spells in succession, blocking Newt's spells, and accidentally blocked the water blade from the blue alchemical array behind him. Feeling the strong impact behind him, and the nearly broken armor spell, Fabrizio's soul was about to burst. It was just a little bit. If his armor spell had been released a little later, I'm afraid his head would have been cut off by the water blade. However, Green's attack did not stop. Several bright red alchemical arrays were created in succession from Fabrizio's blind spot. Before Fabrizio could react, several silent and invisible spells broke through the air from the bright red alchemical array. From his disciple Lin En, Green learned the invisible spell, a highly concealed black magic. After combining it with the bright red alchemical array that can store spells and release them silently, the concealment of the invisible spell has reached its extreme. Several invisible spells broke through the air from these bright red alchemical arrays, cutting off Fabrizio's left arm and right leg respectively. Ah! Fabrizio wailed in pain twice. The pain caused by the black magic left on his wound made his eyes blurry, and he fell to the ground. A ray of blood light lit up at Fabrizio's wound. This was the secret method of vampires. He was trying to use this secret method to expel the black magic left on his wound. However, Newt was not going to give him this chance. Newt put 2 fingers to his mouth and whistled hard. The next moment, the curled winged demon that killed a lot of Death Eaters flew back, and at Newt's signal, it went straight to Fabrizio's forehead. The flying speed of the curled winged demon was so fast that Fabrizio didn't have time to react at all, and was pierced through the forehead by the curled winged demon. The curled winged demon drilled into Fabrizio's head and greedily sucked Fabrizio's brain marrow, just as Fabrizio once greedily sucked the blood of muggles and even wizards. It can be said that Fabrizio died in the same way he had inflicted on others countless times. After killing the vampire leader Fabrizio, Newt and Green decided to join forces to kill all the vampires on the battlefield. Compared with ordinary Death Eaters, vampires who can suck the blood of wizards to strengthen themselves are undoubtedly a greater threat. On the other side, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin and Alastair Moody also blocked in front of a tall figure. The owner of this tall figure is the werewolf leader who has already transformed into a werewolf, Fenrir Greyback. Greyback, your enemy is me. On this full moon night, Lupin also completed the werewolf transformation. He took the wolf poison potion in advance and maintained his sanity. But facing Greyback, who bit his childhood self, turned himself into a werewolf, and ruined his life, Lupin's eyes were red, and he felt that he was almost losing his mind. Remus, Sirius and I will lead the battle for you. You come to kill Greyback, and you will take revenge yourself. Moody growled. Whether it was Moody or Sirius, they knew very clearly in their hearts that being bitten by Greyback when he was a child and becoming a werewolf was a lifelong pain for Lupin. Therefore, whether it was to inspire Lupin's fighting spirit and better kill Greyback, or to let Lupin kill his enemy with his own hands and fulfill his great wish, they had to let Lupin, who had transformed into a werewolf, fight Greyback. Lupin didn't say anything. He growled and pounced on Greyback, and he slapped Greyback's slender wolf face with one claw. Looking at Lupin who was attacking him, Greyback snorted coldly, and his right hand stretched forward, and he actually grabbed Lupin's outstretched wolf claw like a pliers. As the leader of the werewolves and the culprit who personally infected Lupin into a werewolf, Greyback's combat experience in the werewolf form was much stronger than Lupin, who was extremely resistant to werewolves in his heart. Lupin turned into a werewolf on this full moon night. His improved physical strength was so insignificant in front of Greyback, the leader of the werewolves, and his best defense against the dark arts was almost lost after he turned into a werewolf. This greatly weakened Lupin's combat power. In werewolf form, Lupin had almost no chance of defeating Greyback. But don't forget that Lupin was not fighting alone. There were Sirius and Moody behind him. After seeing Lupin being controlled by Greyback, Sirius did not hesitate to use a crushing spell to hit Greyback's arm, while Moody used a cutting spell to chop Greyback's head. Feeling the two spells flying from a distance, Greyback looked unhappy. He slapped Lupin in front of him and sent him flying, and then slapped the two spells with his claws. Compared with those infected werewolves, Greyback's improvement after turning into a werewolf was much higher. His physical strength and magic resistance have reached an incredible level. The defensive ability of his wolf claws against magic was even better than the armor charm. He just slapped away Sirius's crushing curse and Moody's slicing curse with one claw, but his palms only had some fine blood stains. Chapter 734, Descendants of Aragog, I will send you off with my own hands. Seeing their attacks being smashed by the opponent, Sirius and Moody's faces were a little ugly. Sirius hesitated for a moment, then pointed his wand at Greyback again and shouted, Avada Kedavra. Facing Greyback, who had a strong body and such high magic resistance, some powerful magic or even black magic obviously could not achieve good results. The Avada Kedavra was different. The judgment of the Avada Kedavra was death, and it did not care about the level of Greyback's magic resistance. The Avada Kedavra ignored the characteristics of magic defense and made Greyback, who turned into a werewolf, unable to use the wandless levitation spell to control objects to resist him. He could only dodge to avoid the attack of the Avada Kedavra. Greyback dodged the Kedavra cast by Sirius by turning sideways. He did not expect that the members of the Order of the Phoenix, who claimed to be righteous people, would choose to use the Kedavra to attack him. In fact, Sirius could not do such a thing in the past, but under the influence of Lin and Irina, Sirius understood more and more that there is no right or wrong spell in war, only the most suitable spell. Since the Avada Kedavra is very effective in attacking werewolves like Greyback, Sirius would naturally not leave the Kedavra unused and use ordinary spells to scrape Greyback. Greyback wanted to fight back against Sirius, but the werewolf Lupin who attacked him like a mad dog, regardless of everything, even in exchange for injury, made him unable to take care of Sirius and Moody in the distance. Lupin was obviously not Greyback's opponent, but his almost desperate fighting style made Greyback a little scared. If Greyback chose to attack, the killing curse from Sirius and Moody in the distance would force him to retreat, and if he chose to defend, Lupin's stormy attack would leave many scars on him. Greyback's biggest reliance was his physical strength and magic resistance in werewolf form, but his own magic level was not stronger than any one of Sirius, Lupin and Moody. However, under Lupin's restraint, Greyback's physical advantage could not be brought into play, and his physical strength and magic reserves were constantly consumed by the joint attack of Sirius, Lupin and Moody. As time went by, Greyback's movements became slower and slower, especially after he made a mistake and was blown off his right arm by Moody's full-strength explosive curse. He could hardly resist Lupin's increasingly fast attack. Remus Lupin, you are also a werewolf. Even if you win, those wizards will not treat you as you deserve. Feeling the breath of death surging around him, Greyback was afraid. He roared, but his body retreated step by step under Lupin's attack. Hearing Greyback's words, Lupin's eyes became even redder, and he growled, "If it weren't for you, my life would have been. Greyback, you must die." Lupin leaped out and took advantage of Greyback's unpreparedness to knock him to the ground. Greyback was horrified, and he subconsciously slapped Lupin's head. Facing this powerful blow, Lupin did not dodge or evade, but instead faced Greyback's attack and bit Greyback's neck. The sharp fangs pierced Greyback's neck and pierced his artery. Lupin bit Greyback's neck desperately. Greyback's slap hit Lupin's head hard. The horrible blow made Lupin's head deflate a little. The violent impact made Lupin dizzy. But Lupin did not let Greyback go. He bit Greyback's neck hard, enduring the dizziness and the pain, as if he was close to death, until Greyback died completely. "Damn, Remus, are you okay?" Sirius hurried forward. When he saw Lupin's bloody and even deflated head, he was horrified. He immediately helped Lupin up. Lupin staggered in place for a while, but his face showed a look of relief. He shook his head gently, indicating that he was fine. Moody said lightly, "Sirius, you take Remus back to the castle to heal. I will kill the remaining werewolves." As the only medical staff in the school hospital, Madame Pomfrey did not leave the castle to fight, but stayed in the school hospital, ready to treat the wounded at any time. Hearing this, Sirius nodded solemnly, and he helped Lupin walk towards the direction of Hogwarts Castle. Moody rushed to the battlefield quickly, and when he waved his wand, several powerful crushing spells broke through the air, blowing the heads of several werewolves into a bloody rain. Not only Moody, but all the members of the Order of the Phoenix set their goals on those werewolves. On this full moon night, these werewolves not only have extremely high physical strength and magic resistance, but also have the ability to infect young wizards into new werewolves. In order to protect the young wizards of the DA army who are still fighting on the front line, these members of the Order of the Phoenix naturally have to kill these werewolves first. At the same time, the nuking of the 8-eyed giant spider family, that is, the colorful 8-eyed giant spider, has already climbed the high ground and headed towards the battlefield. Just when this colorful 8-eyed giant spider was about to attack the members of the DA army, two figures who came around from the back of Hogwarts Castle blocked it in front of it. The colorful 8-eyed giant spider looked up and saw Hagrid, who looked sad, and his half-brother Grawp, who looked a little confused. "It was me who put Aragog in the Forbidden Forest. It was me who allowed the 8-eyed giant spiders to breed and grow in the Forbidden Forest. It was me who didn't think highly of Aragog's family and made them accomplices of the Death Eaters," Hagrid said sadly. He didn't expect that the descendants of his best friend would become their enemies now. Not only that, the existence of these 8-eyed giant spiders also threatened the lives of his former professors, his comrades, and even his students. This made Hagrid see it and feel pain in his heart. "It's my fault that caused all this, so let me end it all." Hagrid finally raised his head, and his eyes were full of murderous intent when he looked at the colorful 8-eyed giant spider. "Descendants of Aragog, I will send you off with my own hands." Hagrid roared loudly, holding a 2-meter-long alchemical spear in his right hand and an alchemical crossbow in his left hand. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 735. He can't bring victory to anyone. These alchemical weapons were taken out by Hagrid from the warehouse of Hogwarts Castle. After learning that Hogwarts Castle was going to purchase a large number of arms from Weirly's arm shop, Hagrid commissioned Fred and George to customize a spear and a crossbow for him. Not only that, Hagrid also asked Fred and George to customize a set of armor for Grawp. The giant Grawp was seen with a metallic luster flashing, and the mithril armor was worn on Grawp's body, protecting his vitals. Hagrid raised the alchemical crossbow in his hand, aimed it at the colorful 8-eyed giant spider, and pulled the trigger. Swish, swish, swish. A burst of mechanical sounds rang out, and a series of alchemical crossbow arrows broke through the air and went straight to the colorful 8-eyed giant spider. Hearing the explosion of the arrow piercing the air, the colorful 8-eyed giant spider quickly dodged to one side. However, the firing speed of the alchemical crossbow and the flying speed of the alchemical crossbow arrows were greatly enhanced by the operation of the alchemical array. This made the colorful 8-eyed giant spider pierce its body, even if it dodged at the fastest speed. The sharp alchemical crossbow arrows pierced into the body of the colorful 8-eyed giant spider, and a large amount of turbid blood exploded and splashed all over the ground. The colorful 8-eyed giant spider let out a painful hissing sound. Even though its tenacious vitality recovered its injuries in a few breaths, and threw out the alchemical crossbow arrows that pierced its body, the pain of the flesh and blood bursting was unbearable for it. Taking advantage of the alchemical crossbow's success, Grawp also rushed over with a 5-meter long metal mace and smashed it on the head of the colorful 8-eyed giant spider. The colorful 8-eyed giant spider roared, and its whole body almost stood up, trying to catch the metal mace with its 4 spider legs. At the moment when the legs of the colorful 8-eyed giant spider collided with the metal mace, Grawp's great strength and the weight of the metal mace broke 2 of the legs of the colorful 8-eyed giant spider. The remaining 2 spider legs made a crackling sound under the heavy load, and twisted strangely under the impact of the metal mace, pressing in front of the body of the colorful 8-eyed giant spider. The spikes of the metal mace were less than a foot away from the body of the colorful 8-eyed giant spider. The colorful 8-eyed giant spider spit out a colorful unknown liquid at Grawp. It was the venom of the 8-eyed giant spider, but the venom of this colorful 8-eyed giant spider seemed to be more toxic. When this ball of colorful unknown liquid fell on Grawp's armor, the mithril armor was corroded by the venom, and a dark pit appeared. In order to force Grawp back, the colorful 8-eyed giant spider continuously sprayed multiple balls of venom at Grawp. Grawp's mithril armor protected its vitals, but it did not cover its entire body. Inadvertently, a drop of venom fell on Grawp's thigh. In an instant, the highly corrosive venom corroded Grawp's thigh. Grawp screamed in pain. Seeing this, Hagrid was extremely distressed. He pulled the trigger of the alchemical crossbow at the colorful 8-eyed giant spider, making it unable to spit out venom, and walked towards the colorful 8-eyed giant spider with the alchemical spear in hand. Hagrid took a step forward with his left leg, and came not far in front of the colorful 8-eyed giant spider, and his right hand threw the alchemical spear fiercely. The moment before the alchemical spear flew out of his hand, the alchemical spear automatically absorbed a large amount of magic power from Hagrid's body, and all the alchemical arrays on the alchemical spear, used to enhance its power, were also activated along with the injection of magic power. The alchemical spear looked extremely sharp. As Hagrid threw it out, it turned into a white light in the air like a rainbow piercing the sun, and pierced through the body of the colorful 8-eyed giant spider. The power of the alchemical spear was released in the body of the 8-eyed giant spider. The violent impact shocked the colorful 8-eyed giant spider to death, and the alchemical spear also strung the colorful 8-eyed giant spiders together, completely nailing them to the ground. Looking at the dead colorful 8-eyed giant spider, Hagrid's face was complicated, and he slowly exhaled a breath of turbid air. After the death of the new king of the Forbidden Forest 8-eyed giant spider clan, the remaining 8-eyed giant spiders will be leaderless, which means that they will not be restrained by any force. Without the orders from the new king, the more than 1,000 8-eyed giant spiders left on the battlefield all fled in all directions. If there were Death Eaters who wanted to stop them, they would even turn against the Death Eaters who blocked their way, and pierce the Death Eaters' chests with their sharp spider legs. In the end, only more than 200 Acromanthus spiders managed to escape. After escaping the battlefield, they went into the Forbidden Forest and disappeared. However, these Acromanthus spiders did not know that the centaurs in the Forbidden Forest had laid a net on the edge of the Forbidden Forest long before they entered the battlefield. Whether it was the acromanthus spiders or the Death Eaters, if they planned to escape from the Forbidden Forest, they would fall into the trap of the centaurs and die under the centaurs' arrows. This was a deal between Lin En and the centaurs in the Forbidden Forest for 100 all-chemical crossbows. On the battlefield, Irving found Rookwood. Rookwood, this battlefield will be your destination. Irving looked at Rookwood coldly not far away. When he raised his hand, thousands of thunders fell from the sky and headed straight for Rookwood. The ancient magic of Thunderbolt that Irving learned allowed him to infinitely stack the power of Thunderbolts. After several years of stacking, the Thunderbolts he could control were already infinitely close to the level of a Demon King level wizard. It can be said that Irving was like Lin and Irina at the beginning. He only needed that last step to enter the realm of a Demon King level wizard. Even though Rookwood's magic power was far stronger than that of an Aelitor under Voldemort's reward, and even under the illumination of the bloody dark mark, he reached the level of a quasi-Demon King level wizard. But in front of Irving, Rookwood could only hide. Fry, you are obviously a wizard from a pure blood family. Why do you stand with those mudbloods? It is obviously in your best interest to join the Master and the Death Eaters. Rookwood roared loudly, and he kept waving his wand and releasing the Iron Armor curse. Rookwood had never seen such a powerful variation of the weather spell. Even the powerful armor spell he released with all his strength could not resist the thunder that the other party released casually. Voldemort can't bring victory to anyone. Irving walked towards Rookwood calmly, as if he was the god of death. He only brings killing, death, and fear. Suddenly, Irving stopped, raised his right hand, and clenched it slightly in the air. Then, his dreamy voice rang out. The lightning, so sad and beautiful. Chapter 736, Madness under the Scarlet Blood Moon, the unsportsmanlike Harry. In an instant, a large amount of thunder filled the area of 50 meters around Irving. The blue-purple lightning turned into a bull-shaped thunderstorm, raging around him and destroying everything around him. A ray of lightning hit Rookwood's chest fiercely, exploding his skin and flesh, and his chest was charred. Ah. Damn it. Damn it. Super armor protection. Rookwood screamed while enduring the severe pain and releasing a powerful armor spell to resist the thunderstorm that kept exploding beside him. Rookwood quickly retreated backwards, trying to escape the range of the thunderstorm released by Irving. However, a palm thunder shot by Irving with his hand completely shattered Rookwood's fantasy. The blue-purple thunder broke through the air, shattered the powerful armor spell released by Rookwood, and then bombarded Rookwood's back, knocking him several meters away and falling heavily to the ground. Irving raised his right hand holding the magic wand, and the thunder compressed thousands of times was released from the top of his magic wand and continued to extend in the air, turning into a long whip of thunder. Irving swung the magic wand in his hand, and the long whip of thunder lashed Rookwood's legs fiercely. With the sound of explosion, Rookwood's legs were charred and even carbonized in many places. With just one blow, Irving crippled Rookwood's legs. Flee, you will die. The Flea family will be destroyed by the Great Dark Lord. Rookwood cursed in pain, but soon, he could not speak. I saw a ball of lightning compressed by a huge thunder force flying out from Irving's palm and lightly falling in front of Rookwood. Then, a violent explosion sounded, and the ball of lightning suddenly exploded in front of Rookwood, releasing a huge thunder force, all bombarding Rookwood. The armor spell that Rookwood released in a hurry could not even last a breath in front of the ball lightning, and was completely torn apart like paper. When the lightning dissipated, Rookwood's figure had disappeared from the spot, leaving only ashes floating in the air. At the same time that Iwind killed Rookwood, Astoria also stood opposite Yaxley. Feeling the strange magic power and the almost non-existent aura surrounding Yaxley, Astoria frowned and said in a deep voice, Yaxley, I guess you are the culprit who instigated the 8-eyed giant spider clan in the Forbidden Forest to rebel. Yaxley sneered, and when the magic wand in his hand shook, dozens of black magics as dark as ink were shot in the direction of Astoria. This is not something you, a little girl, should consider. Yaxley said so, but he did not underestimate Astoria at all. While releasing the black magic to attack Astoria, obscure syllables sounded from his mouth again. It was a very profound curse. Yaxley's little movements naturally did not escape Astoria's eyes. She snorted coldly, and a blood-colored barrier blocked her in front of her, blocking the black magic that was shooting at her. Then, She flicked her finger, and a drop of blood shot out like a bullet, heading straight for Yaxley's forehead. Feeling the threat of death, Yaxley had to interrupt the action of casting the curse, and rolled to the side, to avoid the blood drop shot out by Astoria. Yaxley looked at Astoria in shock. He did not expect that the power of a drop of blood shot out by this seemingly underage little witch was actually as powerful as the powerful crushing spell. Shattered into pieces. Shattered to pieces. Invisible. Astoria waved the wand in her hand like a baton of an orchestra, and several spells attacked Yaxley in succession. Yaxley was overwhelmed by the spells that kept attacking him like a machine gun. All the armor spells he cast were broken, leaving him rolling around in the torrent of spells. Not long after, Yaxley made a mistake while dodging the cutting spell cast by Astoria. A huge cut was made on his left arm, and a lot of blood splashed out and fell to the ground. The only thing that made Yaxley feel fortunate was that this cutting spell was just an ordinary offensive spell, not a dark magic like the divine sharpness that was hard to defend against and would prevent the person who was cursed from healing. Yaxley tapped his wand on his injured left arm and drank a bottle of healing potion. The wound on his left arm disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. Witnessing Yaxley's actions, Astoria did not stop him, but instead raised the corners of her mouth slightly. Yaxley, you are too early to be glad. Astoria waved her wand, pulling the blood that Yaxley had splashed out earlier. Then, a huge magic circuit was constructed in front of her. Seeing Astoria's action, Yaxley felt something was wrong. He waved his wand and wanted to cast a spell to stop Astoria. But it was too late. The ritual of cursing the scarlet blood moon with blood as the medium has been completed. As the curse took effect, the full moon hanging high in the night sky turned into a strange scarlet blood moon in Yaxley's eyes. The scarlet blood moon bloomed with a breathtaking light, covering Voldemort's bloody dark magic mark and enveloping Yaxley's body. Under the influence of the scarlet blood moon, Yaxley soon fell into madness. He attacked everything around him recklessly and even accidentally killed 2 Death Eaters with the Avada Kedavra curse. Looking at Yaxley, who had already turned his back on his relatives, Astoria chuckled. When she raised her hand, a blood blade broke through the air and cut off Yaxley's head. At the same time, on the other side of the battlefield, Harry Potter, the greatest enemy of the Master in the prophecy, I will offer you to the Master and ask the Master to forgive my past mistakes. Avery murmured in a low voice, staring at Harry not far away. Harry recognized Avery. When he was determined to die that day, he broke into Avery Manor alone, and the Avery in front of him was the original owner of Avery Manor. How sad. Avery, Voldemort's lackey. I remember very clearly that, if Voldemort had not cast the killing curse on me in time to stop me, I'm afraid you would have died under my explosive curse. Harry sneered and sneered. Before Harry finished speaking, his hand holding the wand trembled quietly, and several disarming spells were released without martial ethics. Heading straight for Avery's face. Chapter 737. Fighting against each other. The war is getting fierce. Avery, who had been prepared for Harry, would not fall for it so easily. His hand holding the wand also trembled slightly, and several armor spells were superimposed in front of him, blocking Harry's attack for him. Since Harry had already started, trash talk was useless. Harry and Avery tacitly stopped talking and focused on casting powerful spells at each other. Neither Harry nor Avery had the superpower of ancient magic like Irving and Astoria, which made it impossible for their battle to end as quickly as Irving and Astoria. Various spells bloomed in colorful colors. This was a standard duel between powerful wizards. Dense sweat continued to appear on Harry's forehead. Avery's magic level was not much weaker than his, which made him have to stay focused in order to suppress Avery and prevent the other party from turning defeat into victory. As time went by, Avery's magic reserves were gradually exhausted, and his physical strength continued to drain under this high-intensity duel. On the other hand, Harry, after feeling that his magic power was a little weak, took out a magic crystal that he had prepared in advance from his pocket. The glove on his left hand was an alchemical glove that Lin had discarded after refining the power of the demon god. It allowed Harry to absorb the magic power of the magic crystal for his own use. As one side gained strength, while the other lost strength, Avery gradually fell into a disadvantage, and was hit by an unavoidable disarming spell. and the wand in his hand was shattered into pieces of wood. Harry finally smiled on his tired face. With the negative effects brought by the bloody dark mark, God knows how much pressure he was under. God's blade has no shadow, Harry said softly, and an invisible blade broke through the air and cut off Ava's head. About 100 meters behind Harry, Ron and Hermione also faced Travers. Under the training of the DA army, Ron's magic level was not low, but under the suppression of the bloody dark mark, he was slightly inferior to Travers, who was strengthened by the bloody dark mark. But Hermione's magic level was far beyond Travers's, so she was almost holding Travers down and beating him. Thunder explosion. All petrified. Shattered to pieces. As Travers' physical strength was gradually consumed, he had no time to release the complete armor charm to resist Hermione's spell, so he could only retreat hastily to avoid Hermione's attack as much as possible. However, the power of the explosion charm exceeded Travers' expectations, and the airwave that swept up blew Travers' body away. The grey-white full body binding charm followed closely and hit Travers, who was still in the air after flying backwards, binding him so that he could not move and fell into a pseudo-petrified state. Before Travers' body fell to the ground, the last crushing charm also fell on him. Travers fell into a pseudo-petrified state under the effect of the full body binding charm, making his limbs stick to his torso and unable to be separated by any means. This also caused the crushing charm that would have only shattered one of his arms to spread to his entire body. When Travers' body fell to the ground, the shattering spell had already taken effect on Travers, blasting him into pieces. Looking at Travers' miserable death, Ron patted his chest with lingering fear and said, "Hermione, your fighting style is really violent." Hermione rolled her eyes at him, took out the same alchemical gloves and magic crystal as Harry from her pocket, and restored her magic power on the spot. A few dozen meters away, Andy and Elsa stood side by side, fighting against Jugson. Among the Death Eaters, Jugson was a senior Death Eater whose magic level was comparable to that of Elitora's, but among those senior Death Eaters, he was not very noticeable. Elsa whispered various protective magic spells to help Andy build a defense system. With Elsa's escort, Andy was very relieved. He gave up defense and kept releasing the explosion spell he was best at. Under Andy's bombardment, Jugson had to do his best to defend. It's not like Jugson didn't think about fighting back, but Elsa's protective magic made all his magic, except Avada Kedavra, useless, and Elsa could temporarily release the levitation spell to control other obstacles to resist the Avada Kedavra he released. Andy and Elsa's magic level was comparable to Jugson's. Under the 2-on-1 fighting style, Jugson had no room to fight back. Andy's explosion spell kept cutting off Jugson's retreat and forced him to the edge of the battlefield. Whenever Jugson wanted to get closer to other Death Eaters and ask for support from other Death Eaters, Andy would release a powerful explosion spell in advance to separate Jugson from other Death Eaters, or before Jugson could get support from other Death Eaters, he would directly blow up the Death Eater with an explosion spell. Soon, under Andy's step-by-step pressure, Jugson retreated to the edge of the battlefield, and behind him was the cliff at the edge of the high ground. Seeing this scene, the corners of Andy's mouth slightly raised. It's time to close a net. Andy's wrist holding the magic wand shook quickly, and more than 10 orange red beams flew out in a breath, blocking all of Jugson's retreat routes, and the last explosion spell flew to Jugson's face. A sure kill. No solution. Jugson had no way to escape, even if he gritted his teeth and chose to jump off the cliff, and his explosion spell that followed, when his body was suspended in the air and unable to make any turns, hit him directly. The bursting fire swallowed Jugson, and without any surprise, Jugson died under this explosion spell. "Well done, Andy," Elsa said happily, and she handed Andy a bottle of magic potion to restore magic. Andy drank the potion in one gulp, and he looked at Elsa with gentle eyes, and he said softly, "Go help others. After this difficult guy died, those Death Eaters are no longer a threat to me." Elsa nodded seriously. Although there are more than 2,000 Death Eaters, there are only a dozen or so Death Eaters whose magic level is comparable to or even exceeds that of Elitora's, and they were all stopped by Hogwarts professors, members of the Order of the Phoenix, or elite members of the DA army such as Irving, and fought against each other. This means that after Andy killed his target, Jugson, whose magic level is comparable to that of elite auras, it would be as easy for him to kill other Death Eaters in the distance as killing chickens and dogs. Chapter 738. Do you think they will mourn for you? Exclamation mark. Damn Wheel Eye, pure blood traitor. Mulcyber fled in panic under the attack of the Weir Light Winds, shouting harsh words, and constantly putting on layer after layer of armor spells on himself. Dozens of meters away, Fred and George held hands, and a full 10 all-chemical arrays surrounded them, shooting golden beams in the direction of Mulcyber. Fred and George learned the essence of alchemy in combat from Green. Even when Green himself was in battle, in order to ensure maximum efficiency, he only refined 5 all-chemical arrays at the same time. But Fred and George had a common mind, and could even refine the same all-chemical array together, which made them still at ease, even if they refined 10 all-chemical arrays at the same time for combat. The frequency of the golden beams emitted by each all-chemical array they refined exceeded that of the all-chemical heavy machine guns, and the power of the golden beams was not weaker than the all-chemical bullets equipped by those all-chemical heavy machine guns. This makes the two of them work together, which is equivalent to an all-chemical heavy machine gun position. It can be imagined that Mulcyber, who is facing an entire all-chemical heavy machine gun position on his own, is under great pressure at this moment. If it weren't for Mulcyber's own strong ability, he would have perfectly utilized everything that could be used in the surrounding environment, and moved those stone pillars and other obstacles with floating spells to resist the golden beams, using the least magic power consumption to resist the most golden beams. Otherwise, if it were other Death Eaters, I'm afraid the opponent would not be able to hold on for even a breath, and would die under the joint attack of Fred and George. Just when Mulcyber was fighting and retreating, thinking that he could escape, the appearance of nearly 10 tall figures made Mulcyber completely desperate. Stone slabs move. Only to hear Professor McGonagall's voice from a distance. There were 7 or 8 stone statues that should have stayed in Hogwarts Castle holding huge swords, slowly walking from the direction of Mulcyber's escape. These 7 or 8 stone statues holding huge swords completely blocked Mulcyber's retreat, forcing Mulcyber to confront the Weir Light Winds head on. In addition to the dozens of alchemical puppets that Fred and George brought when they came from the Weir Light shop, there are also controllable alchemical creations inside Hogwarts Castle, that is, these stone statues. As the vice principal of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Professor McGonagall naturally has the authority to mobilize these stone statues. Mulcyber's eyes were red with anxiety. He waved his wand desperately. While bearing the attack of thousands of golden beams, he also blew up 2 stone statues with an explosive spell, tearing a gap in the originally tight encirclement. Under the concentrated fire of an all-chemical heavy machine gun position, he was able to smash 2 ancient stone statues of Hogwarts Castle. Mulcyber's magic level may have reached the level of a quasi-demon king level wizard. However, when Mulcyber waved his wand to smash the stone statue, a bright red alchemical array was formed silently under Mulcyber's feet. The next moment, a silent and invisible spell flew out from the bright red alchemical array, splitting Mulcyber's body in 2 from bottom to top under Mulcyber's feet. A bloodline appeared in the middle of Mulcyber's forehead, and this bloodline spread all the way to his crotch. His body was completely cut open, and a large amount of blood and organs fell to the ground, dyeing the surrounding stone statues red. "Thank you, Professor McGonagall." Fred waved to Professor McGonagall in the distance. Professor McGonagall's expression became gentle. After nodding to Fred and George, she continued to control other stone statues to join the battlefield and resist the attack of the Death Eaters. Ministry of Magic, London, England. Time goes back to the moment when old Barty used a special 2-sided mirror to send a message for help. Barty's trust in Scrimgeour was not in vain. Before he successfully sent a message for help, Scrimgeour did block all attacks from McNeil. Scrimgeour cast almost all the protective magic he knew on Barty, which made McNeil try his best, but failed to interrupt Barty's actions. This made McNeil furious. He stopped trying to interrupt Barty and pointed his wand at Scrimgeour, who was blocking Barty and ruining his plans again and again. A jet black ray shot out from McNeil's wand. This jet black ray seemed to be heading towards Barty, which made Scrimgeour quickly strengthen the protective magic cast on Barty. But who would have thought that this jet black ray, under McNeil's control, was forced to turn in the air and headed straight for Scrimgeour. Scrimgeour never expected that McNeil would give up, interrupting old Barty's call for help and choose to kill himself first, which caught Scrimgeour off guard and hit him in the chest with the inky black ray. Ah! Scrimgeour screamed in pain. The inky black ray was undoubtedly an extremely vicious black magic. The flesh on Scrimgeour's chest began to rot at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the scope of his body's rot was still spreading. The remaining power of the black magic was even constantly devouring the magic power in Scrimgeour's body. Scrimgeour's body fell heavily to the ground. Under the influence of the extremely powerful black magic, it became extremely difficult for him to even get up. Go, old Barty. With the Demon King level wizard here, the Ministry of Magic will not fall, but before that, you must live. You are our minister. Scrimgeour used up his last strength and shouted at old Barty. However, old Barty, who successfully sent a message for help, did not choose to leave, but drew his wand and pointed it at McNeil. After knocking down Scrimgeour, McNeil looked at old Barty coldly. He sneered, "You are a puppet minister who was supported to take the position. Even if you sacrifice your life for all and Lowell, you will not be favored by them. Do you still naively think that they will mourn for you? In the whole of the Ministry of Magic, auras were killed by Death Eaters one by one. Even those Ministry of Magic staff who came to support died miserably under the wands of those Death Eaters." The wailing sounded continuously, but it could not dispel old Barty's determination. The anger in old Barty's eyes seemed to disappear at this moment, replaced by extreme calmness. He looked at McNeil calmly and said softly, "McNeil, you are narrow-minded in killing, so naturally you can't understand. Chapter 739 Death is a heroic moment, but if you try to survive in a despicable way, your life will be too long." Chapter 739 Death is a heroic moment. If we survive in a despicable way, this life will be too long. We come from wizards, and we are ready to sacrifice our lives for the future of wizards. Our lives are like the phoenix born from fire, spreading, burning, and growing until the firewood is burned out, leaving only ashes. Burning dedication is a life, the starting point and the end point. We will not succumb to the Death Eaters, and we will never give in to any wizard enemy, even if it means death. Old Barty said calmly, and dozens of disarming spells were fired from his wand like machine guns. McNeil easily picked up old Barty's spell, and he sneered and said, "Your subordinates don't seem to think so. They have fought for your chance to live." The Ministry of Magic staff who came one after another in the hall of the Ministry of Magic, whether they were civil servants or auras, did not retreat in front of the Death Eater's killing curse, but continued to fight for more life for old Barty. Looking at this scene, old Barty sighed and said lightly, "They are my subordinates and my children, just like me in the past. They are flames that are not yet white hot. They are still young, but my flames are already hoarse, and time is running out." A sharp look flashed in old Barty's eyes, which made McNeil subconsciously raise his wand and be ready. McNeil could feel that old Barty seemed to be ready to fight to the death with him. You can't get rid of your identity as a Death Eater, just as you can't leave here safely. Wave your wand. We will certainly stay here, and we are destined to fight to the death, because I choose to do so. Death is a heroic moment. If you survive in a despicable way, this life will be too long. Old Barty said indifferently, and powerful spells flew out of his wand one after another, heading straight for McNeil. Old Barty's magic level was not inferior to McNeil, which allowed old Barty to reverse the situation, after firing at full power, forcing McNeil to retreat step by step. However, the killing in the hall of the Ministry of Magic was constantly pulling at old Barty's mind. After more than 600 Death Eaters rushed into the hall of the Ministry of Magic, the situation became one-sided. The remaining auras and Ministry of Magic staff were no match for these Death Eaters. Flowers of blood bloomed in the hall of the Ministry of Magic, but at this moment, these flowers of blood came from the auras and Ministry of Magic staff. Every scream of an aura or Ministry of Magic staff before death made old Barty's mind tremble. While old Barty was distracted by the killing in the hall of the Ministry of Magic, McNeil took the opportunity to cast a crushing spell, and shattered the powerful llama spell released by old Barty. Then, the inky black ray shot out from McNeil's wand, and went straight to old Barty. Just when the inky black ray was about to hit Old Barty, a burst of ice blue light gave Old Barty, as well as all the auras and Ministry of Magic staff in the hall of the Ministry of Magic, hope of survival. The icy blue light bloomed in front of Old Barty, turning into an angular ice crystal. The ice crystal seemed to carry an extremely terrifying low temperature, and it actually forcibly froze the energy like dark rays in the air. The ice that froze everything followed the direction of the dark rays and spread to McNeil in an instant. The terrifying low temperature made McNeil tremble, and a touch of despair rose in McNeil's heart. McNeil understood that he had lost. As the wizard government of the British magic world, the importance of the British Ministry of Magic in the eyes of the two Demon King level wizards is self-evident. When the British magic world is about to fall, the two Demon King level wizards will certainly send one person to help here. Judging from the cold that seems to freeze even time and space, the Demon King level wizard who arrived at the Ministry of Magic is undoubtedly Irina. Before McNeil made any other moves, his body, along with his thoughts and soul, were completely frozen into ice that will never melt. The snow white figure appeared beside Old Barty like a savior goddess. Irina, who used the pocket anchor point to complete the teleportation, solved the enemy who attacked Old Barty, and then observed everything around her. However, after seeing the killing in the hall of the Ministry of Magic, anger and murderous intent emerged in Irina's beautiful ice blue eyes. Irina's snow white long hair fluttered in the wind, and the entire hall of the Ministry of Magic seemed to have turned into ice and snow. Endless blizzards descended on the hall, sweeping towards the Death Eaters coming from the direction of the passage. Every snowflake that broke through the air was as sharp as a blade. Damn it. This is the power of a demon level wizard. Why is there a demon level wizard here? The Dark Lord deceived us. He didn't tell us that there are other demon level wizards in the British magic world besides him. I don't want to die. Who can save me? Exclamations continued to ring out among the Death Eaters. Most of these Death Eaters sent to attack the British magic world were dark wizards recruited by Voldemort from the magic world of other European countries. The reason why those dark wizards were willing to join the Death Eaters and obey Voldemort's dispatch was also for Voldemort's power as a Demon King level wizard. You know, in this increasingly weak magic world, the number of Demon King level wizards can be counted even with a palm, and before Lin and Irina traveled to this world, Dumbledore, Grindelwald, Voldemort and Nicholas Flamel were the only Demon King level wizards in the world. Unlike the Muggle world with communication means such as telephones, the efficiency of information dissemination in the magic world is surprisingly low. Even if there are newspapers such as the Daily Prophet responsible for mass communication, there is a natural information barrier between the magic worlds of various countries. This makes the information widely disseminated in the British magic world, but no one in the magic world of other European countries cares about it. Therefore, Lin and Irina's identity as Demon King level wizards is not known to the magic world of other European countries. The magic world in countries like France and Germany still only thinks that Dumbledore is the only Magic King level wizard in the British magic world. When the news of Dumbledore's death came out, Voldemort openly admitted his identity as a Magic King level wizard to the dark wizards in the magic world of European countries, and offered to recruit these dark wizards. With the mentality of admiring the strong, these dark wizards chose to join Voldemort, who was a Magic King level wizard, and became a member of the Death Eaters. In the eyes of these dark wizards, Voldemort was the only Magic King level wizard in the British magic world, and they would definitely have a bright future if they followed Voldemort. Chapter 740, The Coming of the Ice and Snow Goddess, the Avada Kedavra poisonous fog with wide area killing power. Little did they know that Lin Rowell and Irina Lovell in Hogwarts Castle were also Demon King level wizards, and they were Demon King level wizards who were not weaker than Voldemort. In order to prevent the army from losing morale, Voldemort specifically ordered that the native Death Eaters in the British magic world be prohibited from revealing the fact that Lin and Irina were also Demon King level wizards to these foreign dark wizards. After these foreign dark wizards sneaked into the British magic world and joined the Death Eater camp, their only channel for obtaining external information was the Death Eater colleagues around them. This made them know nothing about the situation in the British magic world. Therefore, after seeing Irina, who had the magic level of a Demon King level wizard, appear, they were so panicked and unbelievable. Sending so many Death Eaters to attack the Ministry of Magic. Voldemort really took great pains to get me out of the way. Irina looked at the Death Eaters who were fleeing frantically under her ice magic in the distance, and she sneered. Irina knew that the Death Eaters who attacked the Ministry of Magic were just part of Voldemort's plan to lure the tiger away from the mountain, and the purpose was to get her out of the way so that Voldemort could lead his army to attack Hogwarts Castle, where only Lin, a demon-level wizard, was stationed. I guess the war at Hogwarts has already begun, Irina muttered to herself. I have to move faster. As Irina's voice fell, the temperature in the hall of the Ministry of Magic dropped even lower. A huge blizzard formed out of thin air in the hall and swept towards the more than 600 Death Eaters. The mighty blizzard swallowed up the more than 500 Death Eaters who entered the hall of the Ministry of Magic in an instant. Those Death Eaters who were swept by the blizzard were all turned into ice sculptures. Their flesh, blood, thoughts and even souls were frozen in the eternal ice at this moment. Irina raised her left hand slightly, and a purple gold cold star emanated from her palm, extending continuously in the air. In just a few breaths, it formed a purple gold moonlight with a diameter of tens of meters. This purple gold moonlight cut the space apart, and the more than 500 Death Eaters who were frozen into ice sculptures were all cut by the purple gold moonlight. The next moment, a neat cut appeared on their waists, and their bodies were split in two. Their upper bodies slid down along the smooth cuts and fell to the ground, breaking into ice crystals all over the ground. Seeing the death of their colleagues, the remaining more than 100 Death Eaters who were still in the narrow passage were all scared. They desperately went in the direction they came from, eager to escape through the fireplace they came from. However, Irina just waved her left hand lightly and completely shattered their last hope. Countless ice crystals bloomed out of thin air, completely freezing the hundreds of fireplaces. The several meter thick ice destroyed the Death Eaters' last retreat. Ice prison curse. Irina opened her lips slightly, causing the temperature in the passage to drop to another level. Hundreds of extremely sharp ice cones grew from the ground, and more ice blades appeared out of thin air. These ice cones and ice blades pierced the bodies of all the remaining Death Eaters in an instant. Hot blood splashed out, but froze in the air, turning into bloody ice chips that fell to the ground. From the time Irina came to the Ministry of Magic Hall, it was less than 5 minutes, and all the Death Eaters died in her hands. Looking at Irina, who was invincible, valiant, and beautiful like an ice goddess, all the Aurors and civilian staff in the Ministry of Magic Hall looked at her with faith. In the eyes of these Aurors and civilian staff, Irina seemed to have become the god in their hearts and the object of their faith. Irina landed on her feet. She looked at the Aurors and Ministry of Magic staff lying on the ground in the hall. Her beautiful eyebrows were slightly frowned. She waved her left hand, and the fatal wounds on the Aurors and Ministry of Magic staff were all sealed with a thin layer of ice. This thin ice would not hurt their bodies. On the contrary, it could stop their blood from flowing, and prevent them from dying from excessive blood loss. Send them to St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Injuries and Maladies. HMM. Scrimgeour is also injured? Irina turned around and ordered old Barty. Then, she saw Scrimgeour lying at old Barty's feet. Scrimgeour's upper body was rotten, and the magic power in his body was eroded by the power of black magic. If Irina had not killed McNeil in time and cut off the energy supply of the black magic carrying the curse power in Scrimgeour, I'm afraid Scrimgeour would have died here. But even so, Scrimgeour looked like he was on the verge of death, as if he was not far from death. All curses end. Irina shouted in a low voice, and the demon level all curses end curse was compressed into a very small range by her, acting on Scrimgeour. Under this demon level all curses end curse, the remaining power of the dark magic and curse power on Scrimgeour was completely annihilated, and no longer corroded Scrimgeour's body. Old Barty, lead the Aurors who are still able to fight, send the injured to St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Injuries and Maladies, and then come to Hogwarts Castle for support. Irina said so. Old Barty nodded heavily, and he said seriously, thank you for your support, Irina. Of course I will do this. This is my duty as the Minister of Magic. Hogwarts Castle, above the battlefield. Lin and Voldemort continued to fight. The purple gold purple myrtle skyfire and the dark green avada kedavra curse crossed each other, and under the enhancement of the blood red dark mark, Voldemort seemed to have suppressed Lin slightly. While dueling with Lin, Voldemort also paid attention to the battle situation below. However, after seeing his own Death Eaters suffer heavy casualties under the defense system of Hogwarts, and his capable generals died in the hands of those little wizards, Voldemort was extremely angry. Voldemort knew that, if he wanted to have the greatest chance of winning this war, he had to kill Lin, the Demon King level wizard, before Irina came back. "You are worthy of all my strength, Lin Raoul," Voldemort roared, and the scarlet color in his snake pupils became even more intense. Voldemort waved his wand suddenly, and a ball of dark green light exploded at the top of his wand. Unbelievably, this Avada Kedavra curse was no longer a beam of light attacking the enemy, but a ball of dark green poisonous mist emitting the breath of death. The dark green poisonous fog that continues to spread is filled with the power of Avada Kedavra. Any creature that enters the range of this dark green poisonous fog will be regarded as being hit by Avada Kedavra. Chapter 741. The situation on the battlefield reversed, and Lin En was seriously injured. Seeing the dark green poisonous fog, Lin En's face was very ugly. He did not dare to test the power of the poisonous fog transformed by the killing curse. He had to use the forbidden magic fire to block himself, and then quickly retreated. Unexpectedly, in this short year, Voldemort once again improved the Avada Kedavra curse that he was best at, and even improved the Avada Kedavra curse that killed a single person into this kind of killing poisonous fog that killed a range of people. Voldemort raised his left hand, and a golden beam of light came out from his palm. This beam of light, transformed by the power of the stars, ignored Lin En's forbidden magic fire, passed through the black and red flames, and went straight to Lin En. As a last resort, Lin En mobilized the star source in his body, and released a star power of equal power to offset it. Voldemort's star power was plundered by him, and it was less and less when he used it a little, but Voldemort, who had accumulated a lot of star power in advance, was able to release a powerful attack transformed by the star power at one time. On the other hand, Lin En, who controls the source of stars, can continuously generate more star power. However, it takes time for the source of stars to generate more star power, and it is impossible for Lin En to forcibly plunder a large amount of star power for battle at the cost of overdrawing the power of the source of stars. This forced him to choose to fight and retreat under the constant attack of Voldemort's Avada Kedavra and the power of stars. While Lin En was fighting Voldemort, the situation on the battlefield had already changed. The Acromantula clan left the battlefield, and the Death Eaters, whose magic level exceeded that of the Elite Aurors, were intercepted by the professors of Hogwarts, members of the Order of the Phoenix, and the elite members of the DA army, and fought against each other. After killing their targets, the professors of Hogwarts, members of the Order of the Phoenix, and the elite members of the DA army would join the battlefield and kill more Death Eaters with a crushing momentum. Not only that, not long after the Acromanthus entered the Forbidden Forest, hundreds of figures quickly jumped out of the Forbidden Forest. They were the warriors of the Centaurs. Among these hundreds of centaurs, nearly half of them were holding alchemical crossbows, provided by Lin En, and the alchemical arrows on the bows were also alchemical arrows. Every alchemical arrow they fired could accurately penetrate the head of a Death Eater. Behind these centaurs, there were many short figures holding alchemical pistols and other alchemical weapons, and rushed into the battlefield, shooting at the Death Eaters. These short figures were the house elves in the kitchen of Hogwarts Castle. Hogwarts Castle was facing a life and death crisis, and these house elves would naturally not stand idly by. Although the house elves seemed harmless, this was only the result of the house elves being tamed by wizards after being defeated in the war. Their average combat effectiveness even exceeded that of the Death Eaters. Each house elf can cast spells silently and without a wand, and their apparition can ignore the anti-apparition protective magic of Hogwarts Castle. This allows them to appear and disappear freely on the battlefield. Even if the Death Eaters want to kill these house elves, they cannot hit them with spells before the house elves' apparition and escape. There are fewer and fewer Death Eaters standing on the battlefield. The situation is gradually turning, and the balance of victory is gradually tilting towards Hogwarts. But the strings in everyone's hearts have not relaxed at all. They all know that the situation on the battlefield is only temporary, and the decisive factor of this war lies in the Demon King level wizards who are dueling above Hogwarts Castle. Even if we annihilate the enemy's army, as long as our Demon King level wizards are defeated by the enemy's Demon King level wizards, then the enemy's Demon King level wizards can kill us all in an instant. The efforts they made were just to preserve their own manpower as much as possible before the end of the war. Above the Hogwarts castle, the Avada Kedavra curse released by Voldemort intertwined into a lightning net in the sky, and the dark green lightning net continued to block Lin En's retreat and gathered in Lin En's direction. Lin En did not try to suppress the opponent's Avada lightning net with the forbidden magic fire, but the beams of star power constantly emitted by Voldemort always dispersed his forbidden magic fire. This made Lin En lose the best means to restrain Voldemort. Looking at the Avada lightning net that was shrinking towards him from all directions, Lin En gritted his teeth. He knew that he had no way to retreat. Behind him was the Hogwarts castle. A ball of black and red forbidden magic fire ignited out of thin air, and the purple myrtle sky fire containing the power of the stars was also synthesized by the star power that Lin En forcibly extracted from the source of the stars and continued to ignite in all directions. The purple gold flames turned into a huge barrier, resisting the beams of star power released by Voldemort, while the black-red forbidden magic fire was suppressing and forcing back the dark green Avada lightning net. However, under the bonus of the bloody dark mark to Voldemort and the weakening of Lin En, even though the purple gold flames blocked the star power released by Voldemort, his forbidden magic fire could no longer suppress the dark green lightning net. Looking at the Avada lightning net approaching him, Lin En was ruthless and took out a forbidden magic scepter that was enough to suppress the magic power of a Demon King level wizard and activated it. As a pure alchemical creation, the forbidden magic scepter was not affected by the bloody dark mark, which allowed the forbidden magic power released by the forbidden magic scepter in an instant to successfully annihilate the Avada lightning net in the air. But Lin En was also suppressed by the magic forbidden staff that did not distinguish between friend and foe. The magic power that supported Lin En in the air dissipated, and Lin En's figure fell down suddenly until he was out of the effective range of the magic forbidden staff. However, as early as when Lin En took out the magic forbidden staff, Voldemort seemed to have sensed something and retreated hundreds of meters out of the effective range of the magic forbidden staff. This made Voldemort shoot two black mists in the direction of Lin En's fall without hesitation when Lin En lost his magic power and his body fell down. Lin En's figure just got out of the effective range of the magic forbidden staff and regained control of his magic power. The two black mists hit Lin En's back fiercely, knocking him out. Just these two hits caused Lin En to suffer heavy damage. Bright red blood overflowed from Lin En's mouth, and two black marks with evil and rotten smells appeared on his back. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 742. Even if I cut you into pieces and tortured you repeatedly, it would not be able to relieve the hatred in my heart. Seeing that his attack was successful and Lin En was severely injured, Voldemort finally showed some joy on his face. He waved the wand in his hand and released an Avada Kedavra curse. Voldemort did not intend to give Lin En a chance to turn the tables. The green light beam transformed into countless tiny Avada lightning chains, strangling Lin En with a killing force. But at this moment, as a white light bloomed beside Lin En, a snow-white figure appeared beside Lin En. It was Irina who had solved the Death Eaters who attacked the Ministry of Magic and rushed back through the coordinates provided by the pocket anchor point on Lin En's body. Sensing the Avada lightning network coming from all directions, Irina frowned slightly. She waved the wand in her hand lightly, and the extreme low temperature froze the space of dozens of meters around her. Even the space was frozen by ice, which prevented the green lightning network from going any further in the frozen space. After blocking Voldemort's Avada Kedavra, Irina looked at Lin beside her. But the next moment, Irina's pupils suddenly dilated, and her hands trembled slightly. Blood kept flowing out of Lin's mouth, and the two black marks on his back continued to bring Lin more pain. This was the first time Irina saw Lin being hurt so badly. Irina squatted down trembling, and pressed the extremely compressed 10,000 curses on Lin's back, annihilating the power of the black magic. Then, she stood up, staring at Voldemort with her beautiful ice blue eyes like fire. Very good, Voldemort, Tom Riddle, the product of the dirty love potion, the monster that is neither human nor ghost. How dare you hurt my boyfriend? Even if I cut you into pieces and torture you repeatedly, I can't relieve the hatred in my heart." Irina roared. Her snow white long hair seemed to turn into endless ice and snow, extending in all directions, and the eternal ice and blizzard swept across the sky above the entire Hogwarts castle in an instant. Irina waved her right hand holding the magic wand, and hundreds of ice blades condensed out of thin air, stabbing at Voldemort's vital points at various tricky angles. Not only that, the purple gold Zewey cold star suddenly appeared in the sky hundreds of meters high. The continuously extending Zewey cold star seemed to replace the full moon in the sky. Even the moonlight exuded a mysterious atmosphere under the rendering of this purple gold light. Endless ice spread out with Voldemort's position as the center, and the extreme temperature almost froze Voldemort in place. Feeling the huge power of anger, Voldemort bit his tongue and mobilized his magic to disperse the negative impact of the low temperature on him. In the next moment, his figure was apparitioned hundreds of meters away, avoiding the attack of thousands of ice blades. Magic is idealistic, and this is even more vividly reflected in the powerful Demon King level wizard. Under this angry emotion, the power of Irina's ice magic is almost twice as powerful as usual. Accept the judgment of ice. The cold wave that freezes everything will bury the sinners. Irina shouted in a low voice, and the purple gold full moon seemed to fall from the sky. In the eyes of countless people on the battlefield, the purple gold full moon covering the entire Hogwarts castle was like the sky falling, and it would bury everyone on the battlefield. Even though Voldemort had temporarily broken through the restrictions of the Hogwarts castle and could apparate, he felt that his body was fixed in place by an inexplicable force, unable to move, and even couldn't release apparate. Damn it, I can only take it head on. Looking at the purple gold full moon in the sky that was falling towards him like the end of the world, Voldemort gritted his teeth, and his body was constantly transformed into black smoke and energy under his control. Only the black smoke form can allow him to avoid more physical damage as much as possible, so that his body will not be cut in half by Irina's purple gold moonlight like in the Battle of the Department of Mysteries. The purple gold full moon fiercely bombarded the black smoke that Voldemort had transformed into, and shrill and piercing screams continued to come out of the black smoke, and the purple gold light that kept bombarding the black smoke also forcibly dispersed a large amount of black smoke and turned it into nothingness. After the power of the purple gold full moon was completely exhausted, the volume of the black smoke that Voldemort had transformed into was less than 1/3 of the original. Voldemort recondensed his body, and his face looked very ugly. He was almost able to kill Lin En before Irina came back. Now, Irina rushed back to the battlefield in time, and the remaining black magic on Lin En was also completely removed. As a Demon King level wizard, it would probably take a short time for Lin En to return to the battlefield. There is no doubt that in the next battle, Voldemort will have to fight 1 against 2. In fact, Lin En's speed of returning to the battlefield was several times faster than Voldemort expected. The blazing golden red flames ignited from Lin En's body, like a phoenix reborn from the ashes, and the golden red flames actually restored Lin En's injuries. However, in a few breaths of time, Lin En returned from the flames, and the golden red flames surrounding him cheered with joy, as if celebrating the return of their master. I admit that I'm not your opponent in a one-on-one fight. Even with the blessing of intense emotions, I cannot kill you, but I have never been fighting alone. Lin En stared at Voldemort's scarlet snake pupils. He raised his right hand holding the magic wand, and the golden red fire of Nirvana rose from his body to the sky, interweaving in the sky, to form the shape of a phoenix. The next moment, the huge golden red flame phoenix swooped down towards the battlefield below, sweeping over all the professors of Hogwarts, members of the Order of the Phoenix, and the young wizards of the DA army. After seeing the blazing flames coming straight at them, everyone was shocked. However, after the phoenix transformed by the golden red flame passed through their bodies, everyone felt that their physical condition had become better than ever before. The negative impact of the bloody dark mark on them disappeared without a trace after the phoenix transformed by the golden red flame passed through their bodies, as if some kind of holy power had baptized and purified their bodies and minds. The golden red fire of Nirvana passed through everyone's body. Its healing effect, which was no less than that of the phoenix's tears, made everyone's injuries disappear without a trace, and even the magic power they consumed was restored a little. Chapter 743, Zero Casualties, Incredible Data. Compared to the Death Eaters who were still tired in this war even with the strengthening of the bloody Darkmark, the wizards on the Hogwarts side looked energetic, and didn't look like they had been through a war at all. Just as the wizards on the Hogwarts side and the Death Eaters were about to continue the exchange of fire, more than 200 figures came around from the back of Hogwarts Castle and joined the battlefield. The owners of these more than 200 figures were all Aurors from the Ministry of Magic. After escorting the wounded to St. Mungo's Hospital for magical injuries and maladies, they were led by old Barty and all paraded outside the territory of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and then walked to the battlefield at the fastest speed. Ministry of Magic, kill those damn Death Eaters and avenge our fallen comrades. Old Barty roared, and when he raised his hand, he cast a killing curse and killed a Death Eater on the battlefield. Hearing old Barty's words, the 200 Aurors were all full of fighting spirit. The hatred and murderous intent towards the Death Eaters made every Avada Kedavra curse they released with their wands exude a chilling breath. Whether it was the professors of Hogwarts, the members of the Order of the Phoenix, or the members of the DA army, they might use dark magic such as the Divine Edge spell in battle, but they rarely, or even would not, use the 3 unforgivable curses. This was certainly due to the fact that some young wizards did not know the 3 unforgivable curses, but the main reason was that the erosion of the wizard's mind by the unforgivable curses was the most serious of all the dark magic. The young wizards of the DA army were not yet fully mature in mind, so they naturally could not stand the backlash brought by the unforgivable curses. As the professors of Hogwarts served as the teachers, they had to keep their sanity at all times and not let themselves be affected by negative emotions. As for the members of the Order of the Phoenix, they do not shy away from using the unforgivable curses, but they still have a strong sense of justice in their hearts. Only when they have no choice, such as when they kill the werewolf leader Greyback, will they cast the unforgivable curses such as the killing curse to fight the enemy. But the Aurors are different. As a violent agency of the Ministry of Magic, they must have the ability to destroy all hostile targets in a short period of time, and the 3 unforgivable curses are options that cannot be avoided. This is also the origin of the strict restrictions on the unforgivable curses by the Auror Office. Now that the real war has broken out, the restrictions on Aurors by the Auror Office have been lifted, which makes the Aurors choose to use the magic with the highest killing effect, that is, the Avada Kedavra, to deal with the enemy. Hundreds of killing curses flew out from the direction of the more than 200 Aurors and fell into the army of Death Eaters, killing more than 100 Death Eaters in an instant. After these Aurors joined the battlefield, this war was no longer suspenseful. In the previous battle, more than half of the original 2,000 Death Eaters were killed or wounded, leaving only more than 600 people still lingering on, while there were no casualties on the Hogwarts side. When the Aurors of the Ministry of Magic joined the battlefield, the number of people on the Hogwarts and Ministry of Magic side was equal to that of the Death Eaters. Not only that, among the Death Eater army, all those whose magic level was comparable to, or exceeded that of the elite Aurors were killed one by one. This means that the remaining Death Eaters have no ability to fight back at all, and their existence is originally cannon fodder. Under the joint encirclement and suppression of the professors of Hogwarts, the Order of the Phoenix, the DA army and the Aurors, the remaining remnants of the Death Eaters were also killed one by one and buried on this battlefield. At this point, the Death Eater army brought by Voldemort was completely annihilated, and this war to defend the Hogwarts castle, except for the battlefield of the Demon King level wizards, has not yet been decided, but also has a result. The Ministry of Magic was attacked by a large number of Death Eaters. Thanks to Irina's support, the Ministry of Magic was saved from collapse. Under the attack of the Death Eaters, the death toll in the Auror Office exceeded 300, and the number of seriously injured exceeded 100. I wonder how the casualties are here at Hogwarts. Old Barty came to Professor McGonagall, his expression heavy and his voice low. Hearing old Barty's words, Professor McGonagall's expression was a little strange, or the data that Neville just reported to her made her too surprised. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, the death toll is 0, and the number of injured is 0. Professor McGonagall said this data that even she herself could not believe. As expected, old Barty's eyes widened immediately, with an unbelievable look. You know, the number of Death Eaters attacking Hogwarts Castle is more than 3 times that of the Death Eaters attacking the Ministry of Magic Hall. What's more, the rebellion of more than 100,000 Acromanthus giant spiders from the Forbidden Forest made the battlefield of Hogwarts even worse. And what about the wizards guarding Hogwarts Castle? Exclamation mark. Including the professors of Hogwarts, the Order of the Phoenix and the DA Army, there are less than 300 people in total, which is less than half of the number of Aurors in the Auror office. Just when old Barty was doubting his life, Neville came over. He thankfully held a DA Army badge that had turned into scrap metal, and said to old Barty, "Minister Crouch, maybe I know why, after such a war, we can still maintain a record of 0 casualties." Old Barty and Professor McGonagall both looked over. Neville gestured to the two of them with the broken DA Army badge in his hand and explained, "This is the DA Army badge that Lin distributed to us to prove our identity when we first joined the DA Army. This badge has a more valuable use, which is to unconditionally protect the owner of the badge from any curse, except the killing curse. Not only that, if the wearer of the badge is attacked by the killing curse, the badge will automatically transform into a one-time portkey, teleporting the wearer to a random coordinate 50 meters away, helping the wearer of the badge to avoid the attack of the killing curse. If it hadn't protected me, I'm afraid I would have died under the siege of 10 Death Eaters. If my guess is correct, it was the DA Army badge that Lin distributed to each of us that saved the lives of many of us at the critical moment. Otherwise, the casualties of the DA Army would definitely not be lower than those of the Auror office. As for the Order of the Phoenix founded by the professors and Professor Dumbledore, it is not surprising that they can maintain a record of 0 deaths with their superb magic level," Neville said. Hearing this, both old Barty and Professor McGonagall were surprised. They had not expected that when the DA Army was founded 2 years ago, Lin En had already calculated this step. If it were not for the DA Army badge provided by Lin En, I'm afraid that these future pillars of the British wizarding world would have been strangled in the cradle by this war. Chapter 744 I will rebuild paradise in the ruins. But soon, old Barty raised a new question. He asked, "What about the wounded?" With the old chemical badge made by Lin, it is not difficult to understand that you did not suffer any casualties, but it is impossible that no one was injured. Hearing this, Professor McGonagall and Neville looked at each other. Professor McGonagall explained, "Before you led the Aurors to reinforce, Lin released a flame that I had never seen him use before. I only saw that kind of flame on Albus's phoenix. Lin passed that special flame through all of our bodies. The flame seemed to have special magic. It healed the wounds of all of us wounded, and even restored dark consumed magic and physical strength to a certain extent." Professor McGonagall said in an amazed tone. She had never seen such a powerful collective healing magic. Before Lin released the Nirvana fire for collective healing, the number of seriously injured people on the Hogwarts side once exceeded 100, and the number of slightly injured people was countless, but Lin's Nirvana fire healed all their injuries in just a short moment. No one could have imagined that the seemingly destructive flame actually had the same healing effect as Phoenix Tears. After learning that this matter was also related to Lin En, old Barty was relieved. In his opinion, there was probably nothing in the British magic world that Lin En could not do. Our war is over. Next, we should clean up the battlefield, and then wait for the war between the Demon King level wizards to end. Old Barty looked deeply at Voldemort, who was confronting Lin En and Irina in the air, and said in a deep voice. At the same time, in the sky, Voldemort almost collapsed after seeing that the Death Eater army he had worked so hard to pull together was annihilated by Hogwarts in one fell swoop, and then, a look of madness appeared on his face. He only said in a weird and ridiculous tone, "I didn't want to let wizards bleed, I wanted to keep everything in my memory. But now, I will pay any price to destroy everything in my memory. I will slaughter Hogwarts and destroy the British wizarding world. I will rebuild paradise in the ruins." Voldemort was surrounded by a strange bloodlight, and the aura he exuded seemed to be getting stronger. "Be careful." Lin En looked at Voldemort in full battle and shot a sharp sword. Voldemort seems to be performing some kind of sacrificial ritual. He wants to temporarily increase his own strength. The invisible blade bombarded the bloodlight around Voldemort, but was completely annihilated by the strange bloodlight. Irina also frowned. She saw the wrinkled skin on Voldemort's body, and she immediately had a guess in her heart. Could it be that he is sacrificing his life in exchange for a short period of power? Even though Lin mentioned that Voldemort destroyed his last Horcrux when he rescued Harry at Avery Manor, these few words were not enough for Voldemort to believe it. What's more, in Voldemort's view, Lin didn't know how many Horcruxes he had made, and it was impossible for him to destroy all of his Horcruxes. This made Voldemort think that, even if his life was reduced and died of old age, he could use his Horcruxes to complete his resurrection again, and have a longer, even infinitely long life. Looking at Voldemort's body, that was constantly drying up under the lingering blood-red light, and the increasingly powerful aura emanating from his body, Lin nodded slightly, confirming this statement. Go, kill him. Lin shouted in a low voice, and he clasped his hands in front of his chest. The next moment, a huge pillar of fire with a diameter of dozens of feet came out from between Lin En's hands, attacking Voldemort with a destructive force. This pillar of fire is not as simple as it looks. It is a composite flame formed by multiple different types of flames nested in layers. The outermost layer of this giant pillar of fire is the complementary fire, which is called the eternal fire, and is a golden flame that never goes out. It can be bombarded by magic without being extinguished, and its role is to serve as the shell of the pillar of fire, so that it will not be destroyed by Voldemort. Under the complementary fire, there are Zhui Xianhou and Liho. These two flames guarantee the lethality of this pillar of fire. Whether it is the Zhui Xianhou that blooms with purple and golden light under the bright starry sky, or the Liho that devours everything and turns everything into nutrients, its destructive power in the magic world is the first echelon. In the center of this pillar of fire is the forbidden magic fire. This black and red flame brings the forbidden magic power to Voldemort, suppressing Voldemort's power. On the other side, Irina moved behind Voldemort with her apparition. When she raised her right hand, a huge purple gold moonlight condensed in an instant, and endless ice seemed to freeze the entire sky. As Irina swung the purple gold moonlight in her hand, the purple gold moonlight condensed by the purple star, and attached with a ray of space power under Irina's control actually cut through the space, creating a dark space crack of tens of meters in the air, and attacked Voldemort's back. The flames that burned everything, and the ice that froze everything were released one after another, and arrived in front of Voldemort in an instant. Feeling the terrifying power of ice and fire, Voldemort calmly waved his wand. The bloodlight lingering around him dissipated, and his escaping breath reached its peak. Endless black smoke was released from his body, turning into a spherical shield to protect his body. After Voldemort chose to sacrifice his life and briefly increase his power, the influence of the forbidden magic power that descended on Voldemort on him was infinitely close to zero. The terrifying fire column completely engulfed Voldemort's figure, but the shield formed by the black smoke isolated the flames, making Voldemort bathe in the flames without any harm. On the other side, the purple gold moonlight also arrived behind Voldemort. This power that could even cut through space left a dark cut mark on the shield the moment it came into contact with Voldemort's shield formed by the black smoke. That was the space crack left after the space was cut. A cold light flashed in Voldemort's eyes, and he suddenly turned around. A dark green light flashed in front of him, and it actually deviated the flight trajectory of the purple gold moonlight by a few points, causing it to explode on the side of the black smoke shield. The exploding purple gold moonlight released a terrifying low temperature, and even the energy-formed black smoke shield around Voldemort was frozen in an instant. Chapter 745. To torture oneself for the lives of some ants. However, this freezing did not last long. Even though Lin En and Irina's attacks were aimed at Voldemort, the essence of the power they controlled was incompatible fire and ice. Even though Lin En and Irina deliberately avoided the fire or ice they released to affect the opponent's moves, the physical heat transfer would still allow the high temperature or extreme cold brought by the two to cancel each other out after the two came into contact. After the black smoke shield was frozen for a few breaths, the high temperature released by the huge fire column that wrapped the black smoke shield and Voldemort melted the ice, while the fire column, which was also affected by the ice, could not provide a high temperature enough to burn the black smoke. Seeing this scene, Lin En and Irina's faces showed some annoyance. The nested fire column and purple gold moonlight they just released can be said to be their full strength attack. But such an attack not only failed to hurt Voldemort, but also lost nearly half of its power due to the mutual cancellation of high and low temperatures. Admit it, you can't kill me, you can't kill the great Dark Lord, it's not a shame. After the power of fire and ice completely dissipated, Voldemort waved his hand to disperse the black smoke shield around him. He said calmly. Voldemort raised his wand, as if he wanted to release some magic. Lin and Irina both held their wands across their chests, ready for defense. But Voldemort laughed crazily and pointed his wand at the young wizards of the DA army who were cleaning up the battlefield in front of Hogwarts Castle. I can easily kill anyone you care about. A ray of orange-red light with a bit of black air came out from the top of Voldemort's wand and flew towards the front of Hogwarts Castle below at a very fast speed. There is no doubt that, if this explosive spell really exploded in front of Hogwarts Castle, all the professors of Hogwarts, members of the Order of the Phoenix, Aurors of the Ministry of Magic, and young wizards of the DA army on the ground, would be wiped out in an instant. Seeing this scene, whether it was Lin En, Irina, or the people on the ground, they all showed incredible expressions. They never thought that Voldemort would be so unethical and target ordinary wizards who were powerless in front of the Demon King level wizards. At this critical moment, Lin En gritted his teeth and decisively performed the flame apparition. His figure disappeared in the flames, and before the explosion spell with black gas fell to the ground, he intercepted the flight path of the explosion spell with the burning of the flames. Then, hundreds of alchemical creations lit up on Lin En's wizard robe, and thousands of alchemical arrays started to operate at the same time. The golden light intertwined into a huge and solid golden barrier, intercepting in front of Lin En. Not only that, the black and red forbidden magic fire also suddenly ignited around Lin En, turning into a black and red fire wall, facing the attacking explosion spell. Boom. 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 In a flash, before many people on the ground could react, the blasting spell with black mist hit the golden barrier and exploded. Even the blasting spell released by Peter Pettigrew at the cost of one finger could blow up an entire street and kill so many muggles. What's more, Voldemort, a demon-level wizard, released the blasting spell at the cost of his own life! Lin had every reason to believe that, if this blasting spell fell on the center of London, the entire city of London would be wiped out in an instant. This was more powerful than nuclear weapons. The golden barrier formed by hundreds of alchemical creations could not even withstand the explosion for a breath of time, and it exploded under this extremely terrifying explosion, turning into dust all over the sky and dissipating in the air. Next came the second line of defense formed by the forbidden magic fire, but Lin En still underestimated the power of the explosion spell. After the power released by the explosion spell passed through the forbidden magic fire and even dispersed the fire wall formed by the forbidden magic fire, the power of the explosion spell was only weakened by less than 20%. Looking at the oncoming horrible explosion, and feeling the breath of death lingering in front of him, Lin En gritted his teeth and waved his hands suddenly. The purple gold flame ignited out of thin air and bombarded the explosion. At the moment when the purple gold flame and the explosion wave collided, the two simultaneously spread out a radius of several miles at the same time. The power of the purple gold flame and the explosion wave continued to fight and bombard on this plane extending to several miles in radius. But even so, the purple gold skyfire released by Lin En in a hurry was not the opponent of the explosion. Soon, the blast wave tore a huge hole in the purple gold flames. The residual power of the explosion hit Lin En fiercely, knocking Lin En down from hundreds of meters in the air, and the whole person was embedded in the ground. Under this violent impact, Lin En's skin all over his body was cracked, and bright red blood overflowed from Lin En's skin, instantly dyeing Lin En into a bloody man. Lin En, who took on the remaining power of the explosion spell with his own strength, had his bones all over his body, shattered by the terrifying power, and even his internal organs were violently shaken and even cracked. A large amount of blood overflowed from Lin En's mouth. He was severely injured by the residual power of the explosion, and could not move. His whole body merged with the earth, and a large pit 5 or 6 meters deep was smashed on the ground. A golden red flame ignited in Lin's body. The fire of Nirvana, which had the same healing effect as Phoenix Tears, repaired Lin's broken and even dying body from the inside out. Even though the fire of Nirvana had an almost heaven-defying healing ability, the severe damage to Lin's body caused by this blow almost left him riddled with holes. Even the fire of Nirvana would take some time to restore Lin's body to its original state. In the sky, seeing this scene, Voldemort laughed crazily. He laughed wildly and said, "Ha ha ha, Lin Ro, you are nothing but this. You are so cruel to yourself for the lives of some ants." On the other side, Irina was almost dominated by the rage that soared into the sky. The ice crystal spear flashing with a sharp edge suddenly appeared in her hand. "The second time, you did it in front of me. I will never forgive you." Irina appeared silently behind Voldemort, and the ice crystal spear, carrying the power to freeze everything, pierced Voldemort's back with the force of thunder. Chapter 746. Emotions dominate magic. Irina is accidentally injured. This seemingly ordinary shot was more powerful than the purple gold moonlight that Irina had just released. Endless ice was wrapped in it and stabbed out, fiercely bombarding Voldemort's back. Irina's speed was so fast that Voldemort, who had sacrificed his own life and greatly increased his strength, could not react before Irina stabbed this shot. When Voldemort sensed the attack from Irina, the tip of the ice crystal spear was less than a foot away from his back. He had to hastily release a stream of black smoke to protect his back before the ice crystal spear penetrated him. The moment the ice crystal spear came into contact with the black smoke, it burst out with terrifying extreme cold. The black smoke was frozen under the cover of extreme cold, and the remaining power of the ice crystal spear blew Voldemort away fiercely, blowing him into a bloody mess. Before Voldemort could adjust his body shape in the air, Irina apparated to the flight path of Voldemort's backward flight, and she swept a gun towards Voldemort. The ice blue gun tip passed through the air, and a huge icy force spurted out from the gun tip, turning into a huge streak of hundreds of meters long, hitting Voldemort's waist fiercely. The huge impact force made Voldemort's mouth sweet, and he spit out a large mouthful of blood, and the pervasive cold air drilled into Voldemort's body, trying to freeze Voldemort's body from the inside out. Voldemort quickly adjusted his body shape, and used magic to disperse the icy force that drilled into his body. However, when he raised his wand again, he found that Irina had disappeared from his sight at some point. Avada Kedavra. Voldemort's face changed, and he waved his wand behind him without hesitation, and chanted the killing curse. However, Irina did not appear behind Voldemort as he expected. The ice crystal spear with the power of ice appeared from Voldemort's head, and pointed directly at Voldemort's forehead. The fear of death lingered in Voldemort's heart. He apparated hundreds of meters away, and looked at Irina, who missed the attack, in shock. Voldemort could not understand that he had only severely injured Lin En, and did not even kill Lin En, but Irina burst out with several times the power of the previous one. It is true that magic is idealistic, and the strength of emotions can also control the power of magic. In theory, even ordinary wizards can release spells comparable to those of Demon King level wizards after a certain emotion reaches a limit. But that is just theory. You know, human emotions are diverse and complex. If you want to control the power of a spell, then the wizard must make a single emotion of his own meet the corresponding requirements. However, it is impossible for people to be immersed in only one emotion. When their loved ones are killed, they will be angry, but also sad. The existence of sadness will affect the value of anger, and make anger no longer so thorough. Similarly, the existence of anger will also affect the value of sadness, which will weaken the efficiency of sadness in controlling magic. Voldemort could not imagine how terrifying it was that Irina's anger could more than double her strength in a short period of time. Voldemort was the product of aphrodisiacs. He could not understand love, nor did he understand the emotions generated by love. His joys, sorrows, anger, and happiness came from his own selfish desires, which made him unable to empathize with those who had various emotions because of love. Voldemort held his wand vigilantly. He knew that Irina's attack was not limited to this. Irina's ice crystal spear drew a circle in the air, and the next moment, an ice crystal appeared between Irina and Voldemort. The ice crystal spread out quickly, and turned into a huge domain, covering Irina and Voldemort. In this huge domain, Irina's various attributes were greatly enhanced. This huge domain was like a ring, encircling Irina and Voldemort. Only the winner could leave alive. Irina's figure turned into a nice blue beam, constantly flashing, and every time she shuttled, she would appear in a certain direction of Voldemort and stab the ice crystal spear in her hand towards Voldemort. In just 1 second, Irina turned into ice and shuttled hundreds of times. She was so fast that there was almost an afterimage, as if there were hundreds of Irina waving ice crystal spears at the same time, stabbing Voldemort. Feeling the spearlight that seemed to come from all directions, Voldemort did not dare to be careless. He waved his wand, a wisp of black smoke rose up, and turned into a solid force to attack his body. The spearlight seemed to come from all directions, but there was only one real spearlight, and the other spearlights were just afterimages. The black smoke that rose into the sky shattered all the spearlight afterimages and collided with the real spearlight. The terrifying shock wave was continuously released from the intersection of the black smoke and the spearlight, and even shattered the air within a radius of hundreds of meters. While Irina was concentrating on the attack in front of her, Voldemort's scarlet snake eyes flashed a sinister look, and a trace of extremely evil curse appeared in the palm of his left hand. He slapped it out and imprinted it hard on Irina's abdomen. Irina came from the Ministry of Magic in a hurry, and the rhythm of her battle with Voldemort was so fast that she had no time to release the ice chainmail in advance to fight the enemy, like she did in the battle in the Department of Mysteries. The anger caused by Lin's injury and the desire to severely injure or even kill Voldemort with one shot made her focus on the attack in front of her and neglect her own defense. This made Irina unable to detect Voldemort's sneak attack in time, and she was hit by Voldemort's cursed attack. Irina groaned, blood flowed from the corner of her mouth, and her figure flew backwards. When Irina stabilized her figure, she was already hundreds of meters away. Her face looked very pale, and a palm print with black gas suddenly appeared on her abdomen. Damn it. Irina gritted her teeth, and she waved her wand unwillingly, putting on ice chainmail for herself. However, the curse carried by the palm print with black gas had already taken effect, and unbearable pain came from all parts of Irina's body, making her sweat. Looking at Irina, who was cursed by him hundreds of meters away, Voldemort showed a rampant smile, as if he had won. But the next moment, Voldemort was overjoyed and sad. A silent black spear suddenly appeared behind Voldemort and pierced through his abdomen. Chapter 747 Reason and Emotion. Voldemort tries to escape. The pitch black flame was released from the pitch black spear and exploded in Voldemort's body. A huge blood hole appeared in Voldemort's abdomen, and a lot of blood splashed out. The pitch black flame was not a brand new flame, but a fiend-fi. The original red and black fiend-fi was accompanied by the intensification of its owner's negative emotions. The black part of the fiend-fi suppressed the red part and even occupied almost all the colors. The pitch black fiend-fi continued to devour Voldemort's body, and in an instant, it burned Voldemort's flesh and blood black. Voldemort turned his head with difficulty, but saw that Lin En had appeared behind him at some point. Lin En's dark red eyes seemed to be the eyes of Satan from hell, with a breath of destruction, madness and killing intertwined. This fiend-fi that almost destroyed everything was constantly destroying Voldemort's body. Lin En's body still looked so broken. Even the Nirvana fire with the effect of Phoenix tears was not enough to repair Lin En's injuries in such a short time. The golden red flames in Lin En's body only restored Lin En's ability to move freely. Lin En's body exuded a black gas condensed from a huge amount of negative emotions, wrapped in the raging fiendish fire, as if Satan had come to the world to recreate the whole hell here. I will make you pay the price. I will make you feel the pain of being devoured by thousands of ants. I will let you watch every inch of your flesh and blood being burned by the fiendish fire, and then stay here forever. Lin En's mumbling sounded like the whisper of a devil. He flashed his body and lifted up the black spear that pierced Voldemort's abdomen. The terrifying power almost split Voldemort in two. Voldemort screamed and forcibly apparated hundreds of meters away regardless of the danger of splitting. Crucio. Lin En did not give Voldemort a chance to react. He raised his wand and pointed it at Voldemort. The black air that lingered around Lin En, which was condensed by the desire to torture Voldemort, gathered at the top of his wand as Lin En chanted the spell. The next moment, the dark red lightning with black air broke through the air and hit Voldemort, who had just completed apparition and was still in the skill after swing. Ah! Voldemort screamed in pain. He had never seen such a terrifying cruciatus curse, nor had he seen such a deep-rooted desire to torture a person to death. Even the Cruciatus curse he released himself might not reach this level. Blood flowers kept exploding on Voldemort's body, and pieces of intact flesh and blood exploded under the effect of the Cruciatus curse. The Cruciatus curse, which was supposed to harm the enemy's soul as its main means, caused as much damage to Voldemort's body as the continuous crushing curse. Even the physical damage caused by the Cruciatus curse was so terrible, let alone the damage to Voldemort's soul! Voldemort looked at Lin with a rare fear. He never thought that Lin En, who claimed to be a righteous man and even the guardian of Hogwarts Castle, would release a Cruciatus curse with a power greater than that of him, the Dark Lord. On the other side, after Lin released the black air condensed by the negative emotions around him through this Cruciatus curse, the destruction and madness in his eyes disappeared. The more advanced the battle, the more rational you have to be. Although emotional outbursts can temporarily increase your strength, it will lead to negligence in other places and even lead to irreparable consequences. This is why Lin En chose to gather all the negative emotions into this Cruciatus curse and consume them all. Perhaps, this is why Lin En is Slytherin and Irina is Gryffindor. After dispersing the black air around him, Lin En moved to Irina's side with a flame apparition. He gently stroked Irina's injured abdomen with his left hand, and the golden red Nirvana fire spread out, healing Irina's injuries. Lin En, are you okay? Irina looked at Lin En's broken body, and her ice blue eyes were filled with worry. Lin En shook his head and whispered, that's enough. Next, let's kill Voldemort together. The murderous aura spread out. Lin En held the black spear transformed by the magic fire of the magic prison, while Irina held the ice crystal spear. The two stood side by side. Irina nodded gently. Fire and white light flashed at the same time, and Lin En and Irina appeared in front of Voldemort on the left and right, and two long spears with a terrifying aura went straight to Voldemort's face. Feeling the unmatched sharpness, Voldemort's face was very ugly. His body was also broken by the previous heavy blow. The broken body made it difficult for him to mobilize his magic power. He knew very well that he could not withstand this blow. Voldemort gritted his teeth and disappeared from the spot, apparating hundreds of meters away. However, Lin En and Irina seemed to have predicted Voldemort's foothold long ago. The two of them almost completed the apparition at the same time as Voldemort and stabbed Voldemort again. Irina has studied space magic very deeply, especially in the space magic of apparition. She can calculate the landing point of the opponent's apparition through a trace of space fluctuations leaked by the enemy when he apparates. Lin was able to immediately know Irina's coordinates through the connection between the pocket anchor points and cast the flame apparition to follow closely. In these few breaths, Voldemort apparated hundreds of times, but every time he apparated, Lin and Irina would apparate to his location synchronously and maintain the original action of stabbing the gun. Not only that, every time Voldemort tried to apparate to escape, the distance between the two spears that followed him would be further away. After realizing this, Voldemort collapsed a little. The power that was forcibly increased by sacrifice before has gradually dissipated with the passage of time, which gradually made Voldemort lose the possibility of defeating Lin and Irina. Voldemort gritted his teeth. He knew that he was probably defeated, and there was no room for him to lose. Voldemort's scarlet snake pupils flickered slightly, and he had already made up his mind to escape. A huge white light lingered around Voldemort, which was a precursor to the activation of long-distance apparition. Seeing this scene, Lin En sneered. Lin En waved his right hand holding the magic wand fiercely, and in the blink of an eye, the golden threads in the sky intertwined into a huge formation and covered the space above the entire Hogwarts castle. This is a space blocking formation. Chapter 748. After the long dark night, the dawn of the next day arrived. The space blockade array refined by Lin En can only be broken by a wizard who has advanced to the level of Demon King with his alchemy attainments. Obviously, Voldemort, who has advanced to the level of Demon King with his understanding of the Avada Kedavra curse, does not have this ability. The white light around Voldemort dissipated instantly, and his apparition was completely ineffective at this moment. After realizing this, Voldemort's face changed drastically. He looked at the two spears that were stabbing at him with undiminished power, and could only release a stream of black smoke in a hurry to resist. Without any surprise, the ice crystal spear and the black spear pierced Voldemort's body in a cross shape. The two spears that penetrated Voldemort were intertwined, like a cross, nailing Voldemort's body firmly on it. Blood continued to flow from the corners of Voldemort's mouth. Voldemort knew that his body would be explained here. But Voldemort was not afraid. In his opinion, he had made so many Horcruxes. Even if a few were found and destroyed by Lin, as long as there was one Horcrux, he could still be resurrected. However, Lin seemed to see what Voldemort was thinking. He chuckled, and his left hand passed across his waist. One broken wreckage after another appeared from his palm, and slipped in front of Voldemort. After seeing the wreckage that slipped from Lin's hand, Voldemort couldn't stop trembling, and fear and despair appeared in his eyes. The reason was that he recognized what these wreckages were originally. Tom Riddle's diary, Slytherin's locket, Hufflepuff's gold cup, Marvalo Gaunt's ring, Ravenclaw's crown, and a snake corpse. Nagini. Those were all the Horcruxes he had made, and all his hopes to save his life. Voldemort trembled violently, and he struggled frantically, as if he couldn't accept the fact that he was really going to die. However, Lin and Irina did not give him a chance to escape. The blazing fiery flame ignited from the inside of the pitch black spear, and instantly turned Voldemort's body into a fireman. The red and black fiery flame burned every inch of Voldemort's flesh and blood, and transmitted the pain of the ants gnawing at his heart to Voldemort's brain. After an unknown amount of time, the flames all dissipated, and what followed was the ice that completely froze Voldemort's body, except his head in an instant. Irina slowly came to Voldemort, her ice blue eyes filled with endless murderous intent, and she gently pressed her palm on Voldemort's chest that was frozen by ice. Then, starting from the place where Irina's palm touched Voldemort's chest, Voldemort's unfrozen head made him watch his body shatter inch by inch, like ice chips floating in the air. Voldemort's eyes widened, but the next moment, his head was also covered by flames, and the fiery flame that devoured everything completely turned him into nothingness. So far, the Dark Lord, Voldemort, Tom Riddle, who had brought a dark era to the British magic world and almost overturned the entire British magic world, died completely on this battlefield. And this war finally came to an end with Voldemort's death. After completely killing Voldemort, Lin and Irina slowly fell to the ground, with a look of relief on their faces. In addition to blood-mediated curses such as the blood curse, the magic power supply of most curses in the magic world comes from the wizard who casts the curse. Similarly, when the wizard who casts the curse dies, after losing the magic power supply, the curse will be lifted when the curse power in the body of the cursed person is consumed. Irina was accidentally hit by Voldemort before, and the curse was suppressed by Lin's Nirvana fire, but it was not lifted. It was not until Voldemort died completely that the uncomfortable breath that made her feel disappeared without a trace. At this time, everyone in Hogwarts had already cleaned up the battlefield, and after Lin treated all the injured wizards, they were also sent to St. Mungo's Hospital for magical injuries and maladies. As for the rest of the people, they all stood in front of Lin and Irina, and they all looked at the two of them, as if they were saviors. Old Barty, take the auras back to the Ministry of Magic. It's time to announce to the British wizarding world that the crisis from Voldemort has been completely resolved, and the war is over. Lin nodded to Old Barty who led the auras to support him and said so. Old Barty didn't say anything. After he saluted Lin, he turned around and left with the auras. Irina looked at the DA army and said softly, "Thank you all for your hard work. This war can be won so quickly, and you all have made great contributions." Neville quickly stood up and said, "No, it's all thanks to the badge that Lin gave us. It saved our lives." Many members of the DA army echoed. Lin also came over. He smiled and nodded to everyone, saying, "The British magic world will remember your efforts. When you graduate from Hogwarts, you may consider the Ministry of Magic. I will propose to Old Barty to set up a separate department based on the DA army, so that the DA army can become the British magic world, the real wizard army." Hearing Lin's words, everyone in the DA army was a little shocked. They looked at each other, and they saw surprise and excitement on each other's faces. Just when Lin and Irina were about to say something else, Professor McGonagall came out. Lin, Irina, Professor McGonagall looked at the two of them kindly and peacefully. "I hope you will come to my office to see me in 3 days." Hearing this, Lin and Irina looked at each other in confusion. They didn't understand Professor McGonagall's intention. But Professor McGonagall didn't mean to explain to them. After she finished speaking, she took a group of professors back to Hogwarts. At this time, the sky gradually brightened up. After that long night, the dawn of the next day arrived. Lupin's werewolf form was lifted, and he returned to his original appearance. He walked out of the school hospital, stood at the gate of the castle, looked at this peaceful scene, and recalled the moment when he killed his enemy with his blood. Crystal tears fell from the corners of his eyes. Harry walked out of the crowd slowly. He was once called the savior by people, but he clearly understood that the savior was both an honor and a shackle, and also a heavy burden. But now that the war is over, and the shackles are removed, he can also welcome life in his own name. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 749, The Conclusion of a Blood Alliance, The Fusion of Ice and Fire. After the war, old Barty returned to the Ministry of Magic and announced to the British magic world in the name of the Ministry of Magic that Voldemort was dead, the Death Eaters had been destroyed, and the British magic world had also ushered in peace. On this day, the entire British magic world was full of laughter and joy. People walked out of their homes and took to the streets to celebrate the victory of the British magic world. Diagon Alley and Hogsmeade Village, the largest and second largest gathering places for wizards in the British magic world, were also crowded. Not only that, after learning that the arms of Weirly's arm shop played an important role in this war, the number of wizards pouring into Weirly's arm shop in Diagon Alley and the Weirly's arm shop branch in Hogsmeade Village surged again, and Fred and George also made a lot of money. At the same time, in Hogwarts Castle, Lin and Irina gathered together. Their faces were relaxed, but they did not slack off because of this, but took advantage of the end of the war to make a post-war summary. I don't know if you've noticed, Irina, that when we first joined forces to attack Voldemort, my fire and your ice were unconsciously cancelling each other out, and the power was also weakened in this unconscious cancellation. Lin En said so. Irina was quite distressed. Her beautiful eyebrows slightly frowned, and she said softly, "But what can we do? Heat transfer is a concept in physics. When cold and heat meet, heat will continuously transfer from the hot side to the cold side until both sides reach equality. Even if you and I are consciously suppressing the power of ice or fire, and not letting our power affect each other, this concept of physics cannot be violated even by magic." Irina shook her head and said, "The conflict between physics and magic leads to unnecessary mutual harm." Lin En nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps I have a solution." Hearing this, Irina's eyes lit up. She believed that Lin En was not just talking nonsense, but really had a perfect solution. Lin smiled and asked, "Remember the covenant that Professor Dumbledore made with Grindelwald?" Irina was stunned at first, then she thought of something and immediately said, "You mean the Blood Covenant?" "Yes," Lin affirmed. "It's the Blood Covenant. Blood Covenant. Blood Covenant." Irina seemed to have thought of something. Her eyes sparkled, and she said quickly, "The two parties who have concluded a blood covenant cannot confront each other, nor can they harm each other, and the magic released by each other is also a part of each other. Then, when each other releases magic that is not contradictory in magic, but incompatible in the sense of physics, the power of the Blood Alliance will distort physics, making the magic released by each other unable to confront each other, nor to harm each other. And the parties who release magic not only do not intend to harm each other when casting the spell, but instead use the magic to cooperate with each other. This prevents the Blood Alliance from being inconsistent with itself, let alone collapse." Irina said quickly. She had never thought of such a method. She had learned from Lin En that the way to dissolve the Blood Alliance was to make the Blood Alliance difficult to self-consistent and eventually break and dissolve it, but that was the confrontation between the parties who had concluded the Blood Alliance without wanting to confront each other. However, the flames and ice of Lin En and Irina had no intention of confronting each other, either from the psychological perspective of the casters, or from the purpose of the spells. What led to the confrontation was external factors and the concept of physics. under the premise that both parties who had concluded the blood alliance were extremely loyal to each other and wanted to cooperate with each other wholeheartedly. The power of the blood alliance would take effect. The blood alliance would distort physics and the concept of heat transfer, and similarly, it would allow the magic power that turned into flames and ice to merge. You must know that, whether it was Lin En's magic flame or Irina's ice power, their essence was a special form of magic power. They were essentially products of magic, not natural products. It was just that the forms of flames and ice that they created followed the concept of physics and the phenomenon of heat transfer appeared. In this case, the blood alliance does not need to break physics. It only needs to simply twist it and judge it as raw magic power at the moment when the magic flame and the ice power meet, so that they no longer conflict with each other, but blend with each other. This is extremely profound magic knowledge, and only Lin En and Irina, who are Demon King level wizards, have the possibility to use it. In this case, Lin En smiled and walked forward. Conclude a blood alliance, Irina. Lin En gently cut a cut on his palm, and Irina did the same. Their hands were tightly held together, their blood blended with it, their bodies and minds merged with it, and turned into the crystallization of love and loyalty, a beautiful red gem. Under Lin En's leadership, he and Irina completed the ceremony of concluding the blood alliance, and the beautiful red gem was the symbol of the blood alliance between them. Lin En gently waved the magic wand in his hand, and countless golden silk threads wrapped around it, wrapped up the beautiful red gem, turned it into a pendant, and hung it on Irina's neck. Our blood alliance will be kept by you, Irina, Lin En said softly, and he hugged Irina into his arms. The blazing flames were released from the soles of Lin En's feet, wrapping the two people's figures inside. Under this scorching heat, Irina, who obviously had no affinity for flames, did not feel the pain and burning sensation brought by the high temperature at all. She felt all this with curiosity, and she tentatively put Bezhi's hand into the flames, but the flames only licked her arm and did not cause any harm to her, as if the person standing here was not Irina, but Lin En, who had an affinity for flames. The next moment, the blazing flames disappeared, replaced by eternal ice. The temperature in the room dropped rapidly, and in a flash, the two people hugging each other were wrapped in ice like a big cocoon, frozen in it. Lin En, unable to move in the ice, stared at the girl in front of him. He could feel the coldness brought by the ice, but the ice would not hurt him. The feeling brought by the ice was like a swimming pool in summer, cool and comfortable. Then, the hot flame ignited again. But surprisingly, the flame did not melt the ice, but danced with the ice. The flame penetrated the ice inside and out, perfectly blending with the ice. They will be the best partners, and will not be affected by any external factors. They will be together forever, burning and freezing forever. Chapter 750, The Contract of Mind Image, The Lost Memories of Lin En and Irina. It was unknown how long it took before the flames and ice in the room reluctantly dissipated. Lin En and Irina let go of each other's bodies. They looked at each other with surprise. It really works. The fusion of ice and fire. What a wonderful magic. Irina said happily. Lin En also nodded with a smile, but soon, he seemed to think of something else. He said, by the way, I also learned another kind of contract magic from my teacher. That kind of contract magic is called the heart image contract. The way it is concluded is similar to the blood covenant, but it requires the heart blood of both parties to conclude the contract. After concluding the heart image contract, the two parties who have concluded the contract will have a common mind. Even if they are thousands of miles away, when they want to call each other, the other party can also listen to each other's thoughts. This kind of contract magic called the heart image contract can only be concluded once in a lifetime. So, Irina, are you willing to conclude the heart image contract with me? Lin En looked at Irina and asked softly. Irina's eyes curved, and she said, you know my answer. Irina put the magic wand against her heart, and the next second, a drop of bright red blood flew out of her heart, and floated between Lin En and Irina. Lin En also took out a drop of his own heart blood. After teaching Irina the spell to conclude the contract, he merged their heart blood together. Then, Lin En and Irina held each other's hands, and whispered the spell, to conclude the heart image contract. The mysterious aura lingered around them, and they felt that their bond with each other became deeper and deeper, and their thoughts became more and more accessible, as if the other person was another self. They could feel each other's emotions personally, as if a solid bridge had been built between their heads. Their thoughts could be shared, and their bodies and minds seemed to blend together. After the heart image contract was concluded, Lin En and Irina let go of each other. They looked into each other's eyes, and both saw their own reflections in each other's eyes. After Lin En and Irina concluded the blood alliance and the heart image agreement, time soon arrived on the third day after the war ended, which was the day that Professor McGonagall agreed to meet with Lin En and Irina. Lin En and Irina walked together and arrived at Professor McGonagall's office as scheduled. Professor McGonagall, is there anything special that you called us here for? Lin En asked straight to the point. Professor McGonagall nodded kindly and asked softly, Irina, have you ever found that there is something wrong with your memory, or that a part of your memory has been erased? Hearing Professor McGonagall's words, Lin En and Irina were stunned at first, and then immediately checked their memories. Soon, both of them changed their expressions and became ugly. Lin En looked at Irina, and found that a part of his memory was indeed erased. He told her the memory that he could not find. From Irina's horrified expression after hearing it, Lin En could tell that the part of Irina's memory that disappeared was probably the same as his. After checking his memory, Lin En found that the last time he met Dumbledore was when he walked into Dumbledore's office with Irina, Professor McGonagall, and Snape. From the time he walked into the principal's office until he left the principal's office, all his memories disappeared. He only remembered that he, Irina, Professor McGonagall, and Snape were called to the principal's office by Dumbledore and stayed in the principal's office until dark, and then returned to the dormitory exhausted to rest. But he forgot what he had experienced in the principal's office. The same was true for Irina. Just when Lin En and Irina were in doubt, Professor McGonagall signaled them to put their minds at ease. Then, Professor McGonagall turned around and took out two bottles that were very familiar to Lin En and Irina from under her desk. They were two cloud synchronization memory bottles made by Lin En herself. Professor McGonagall said softly, "This is your memory, and it is also the memory you extracted yourself. And I, Minerva McGonagall, the custodian of this special memory, will do my due responsibility to return the memory I have kept to you after the war is over." Looking at the cloud synchronization memory bottle in Professor McGonagall's hand, and listening to Professor McGonagall's words, Lin and Irina seemed calm, but their hearts had already set off a storm. The memory they personally extracted! Exclamation mark. What does the custodian that Professor McGonagall mentioned mean? Exclamation mark. With a lot of doubts and confusion, Lin and Irina both took over their own memories from Professor McGonagall's hands. They used their magic wands to pull the silver white thread of the memory out of the bottle and injected it into their own minds. In an instant, a large number of memory fragments flashed before Lin and Irina's eyes, and they immediately understood the whole story. Time goes back to the moment when Lin, Irina, Professor McGonagall and Snape walked into the principal's office. "Albus, what's the matter with you calling us here?" Professor McGonagall looked at the old man sitting behind the desk and frowned without leaving any trace. The reason was that Dumbledore looked really bad at the moment. His face was as pale as paper. It was more appropriate to describe him as a candle in the wind. Dumbledore smiled bitterly and stretched out his charred hand. The charred hand seemed to have been completely carbonized. Not only that, there were dense black lines running up Dumbledore's arm, which made Dumbledore's entire arm faintly show signs of carbonization. The black lines spread all the way to Dumbledore's heart. When the curse power contained in the black lines erupted, Dumbledore's life would end. After seeing these black lines, Lin, Irina, Professor McGonagall and Snape all looked condensed. Snape walked forward quickly and grabbed Dumbledore's hand covered with black lines. He said in a deep voice, "The power of the Dark Lord has become stronger, which makes this curse powered by the Dark Lord even more powerful." Dumbledore was not surprised. He asked calmly, "How long do I have?" Snape frowned and said in a low voice, "Less than 2 months. The power of the curse has spread to your heart. Even if you and I work together to suppress it, we can't suppress it for too long." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.